Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. The headline of Saturday's Daily Prophet screamed the newspaper's intent right from the front page. It was time to grovel. It also helped that they could blame everything on a convenient scapegoat. Penitent prophet as Centurion Crow crowned. The imposing figure in our picture wearing the golden helmet and carrying the sword of Godric Gryffindor is Centurion Crow. That this is also the boy who lived immediately indicates there was an error made with the story concerning him previously printed in this newspaper. The beautiful young witch on his arm, though, is once again Miss Hermione Granger. They're all similarities with yesterday's issue of this newspaper. Both Centurion Crow and Miss Granger vehemently denied having met Miss Skeeter, far less participated in an exclusive interview before posing for a picture. It now appears as if Miss Skeeter has spied on the young couple as they visited the Potter graves on Halloween, the 10th anniversary of James and Lily Potter's murder. The Daily Prophet was in no way complicit with this reporter's actions and doesn't want to comment further at the moment, as Miss Skeeter is currently at the center of an investigation initiated by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. This newspaper will of course comply fully with that investigation. Dan Granger let out a low whistle as he read over the front-page article from the newspaper Barchoke had just handed him. His wife was reading it over his shoulder and had her own comment to make. Was that whistle in appreciation of the apology or the picture? Emma had to look at the picture twice to assure herself it actually was Hermione and Harry. Her daughter stood there looking every inch a princess. The jewelry she wore must be worth a king's ransom, while Harry appeared ready to do battle. Their poise and clothing reminded her of a famous historical couple, Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Showing this picture to anyone who didn't know Hermione or Harry, you could never convince them these two were 11 and 12. The royal theme just wouldn't leave her alone as she looked at the wide shot the newspaper had also printed. Hermione and Harry were in the center but surrounded by goblins dressed in their finest. The only thing Emma had to compare this with was a royal wedding photograph. The ones the press were so fond of printing as the royal family gathered on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. That there were thousands of people watching this picture being taken, and the newspaper dedicated a further 9 pages to the event, reinforced the royal wedding image in her mind. She just hoped her husband was following a different mental route. Dan was indeed following a different mental route. This route was currently stuck on a giant roundabout that he couldn't find an exit from. The father was struggling to accept that this beautiful and confident young woman in the picture was actually his little girl. She was standing there facing thousands of strangers, yet drawing the confidence to deal with it from the young man whose arm she was on. The newspaper went to great lengths to extol her beauty and poise. That she spoke gobbledygook and the goblin leader bestowed a great honor on her was certainly something he would need to ask Barchoke about when he got his mind back into gear. Well, there's one thing for certain. Hermione, you absolutely destroyed any notion of you being a gormless village idiot. Your father's opinion may be biased, but I think my daughter is truly beautiful. Then again, I've thought that since the day you were born. His daughter's playful giggles at that was music to his ears. Thanks, Dad. I almost wish I had been in Hogwarts this morning to see certain witches' reactions when that was delivered. I'll need to ask Padme if Cho choked on her porridge or cried. I'm hoping for both. Hermione, isn't that rather unkind? No, Harry, it's not. I'm usually standing there on your arm while Cho tries to flirt with you. I know you do nothing to encourage her, and I can't really blame her either. How did the prophet put it? Dashingly handsome young man standing shoulder to shoulder with a nation's leader as if he belonged there. I understand why all the girls hit on you. It's the way they pretend I'm not standing there that annoys the hell out of me. Harry decided to quote the prophet straight back at her. Well, I don't know how they could possibly ignore the beautiful young witch who sparkles by my side, and I don't think they were talking about that tiara you were wearing. The 3 parents were laughing at the antics of their children. They may be front-page news for the second day in succession, but they seemed far more concerned with what they thought of each other than letting fame go to their heads. I'm just glad we managed to ward your house before this whole thing started. It also has an owl redirect which will allow Irgit and official Gringotts owls only. Anything else will end up at Gringotts where it can be examined before forwarding. This concerned the Grengers, but they recognized that even in their world, getting press coverage like this could attract its own special breed of weirdos and crazies. They were delighted any potential problems would be dealt with before they could get anywhere near Hermione. Barchoke had even more good news for them though. Hermione's status as a goblin friend allows you to do your banking through Gringotts and get our best rates. This could save you thousands on your mortgage and business account. Get your figures and I would be more than happy to go over them with you. The savings will be substantial. Dan thought he should be getting used to the shocks by now. Your daughter is a witch and she needs to go away to Scotland for almost 10 months of the year. Well, it looks as if our summer holiday next year could be a good one. It was a nervous Harry who interrupted. Ember, excuse me, sir. Since you were kind enough to invite me into your home over the Christmas holidays, I was hoping to return the favor at summer. This piqued Emma's interest. What did you have in mind, Harry? Well, because I had to remain hidden, I haven't really left Gringotts much. There are a lot of Potter properties dotted around the world I've never seen, but that I now have access to. I was hoping you would be my guests as we explored some of them. They really do span the globe, from the south of France to the Seychelles and on to the South Pacific. Dan was struggling to believe the wealth of this young lad, and yet how level-headed he appeared. That sounds unbelievable, actually. Wouldn't we spend most of the holiday in airports, though? This drew a puzzled look from Harry. I don't think so, Dan, since I don't know what an airport is. He looked to Hermione for help. Airports are where you go to board planes that fly you to your destination. Can I assume we would be traveling using portkeys? A nod from her best friend saw Hermione offering an explanation to her parents, only for her mother to excitedly jump right in. Oh, that young Weasley chap used one of them to take us to London in seconds. Are you saying that these can be used to travel the world? Barchoke thought Emma's excitement at such a simple thing was a delight to watch. A portkey will take you from one Potter property directly to the next one. Both Granger parents were overwhelmed at this. No waiting in airports for delayed flights. No being bored out your head by sitting for hours on a plane. No arriving to find your luggage is in Timbuktu. No tedious transfers to and from the airports. We're in! This was greeted by an eardrum-bursting squeal of delight before Hermione actually jumped on Harry, wrapping her arms and legs around him, and almost having both of them over. I get to spend Christmas and summer with you. Oh, Harry, that's wonderful. Dan was watching his little girl wrap herself around a boy and his only reaction was to laugh. How could he possibly get upset when Hermione was so happy? It was left to Barchoke to discuss practicalities. I'll organize a folder of those properties that you can all look through when Harry stays here at the holidays. I plan on taking some time away myself over summer, so we could either organize it to be together or split it and give these two a longer holiday. This drew another squeal from Hermione as a delighted Harry twirled her around the room. All three parents were smiling at the antics of their two very happy children. It was also nice to see them acting their age for once. Just a couple of kids very excited about spending their Christmas and summer holidays together. I think those two like the idea of a longer holiday, but I also think we should build a bit of overlap in there too, where we can all be together. Barchoke was quite overwhelmed at Emma's suggestion. That these people would actually arrange their schedule purely to spend time with a goblin wasn't just unbelievable, it was historically unprecedented. I think I would like that very much. We may even have some company, if we can get Sirius Black out of Azkaban. I can't think of anyone who would be in more need of a holiday. It would also give Harry a chance to get to know his godfather. This was something Dan was very interested in. The thought of an innocent man rotting in prison appalled him. What do you think the chances are of getting him out? To be honest, two very powerful men colluded to put Sirius in there. That these two are still as powerful is going to make this a very difficult task. At the moment, it's beyond us. But these two did this one unlawful deal would suggest there may be other skeletons in their cupboards. If we can discredit them, people would be more inclined to believe claims Sirius is in fact innocent. This wasn't nearly quick enough for Emma. Surely the mere fact the man never had a trial should see the entire case reopened. A goblin explaining to a pair of muggles how the magical world worked didn't even qualify for a raised eyebrow amongst this group now. Azkaban is an exceedingly dangerous place. Deaths amongst inmates is not uncommon. I fear that is the fate Sirius might face if we were to go public with this. Dumbledore may preach forgiveness, but only when it suits his aims. Barty Crouch is the ultimate hardliner. The man sentenced his only son to life in Azkaban, and his life is exactly what it cost the young wizard named after his father. Dan looked over to the two children, still in each other's arms and chatting excitedly about their future plans. "We have to thank you for your honesty, Barchoke, almost as much as the lengths you have undertaken to protect our daughter. The more I hear of this world, the more I worry about the decision we made to let Hermione join it. Then I look over there and see what I always wanted, my daughter happy." "No thanks are needed, Dan. I am also looking over there at my son being very happy. I will take every measure I can to ensure their safety. Gringotts now have an employee we can trust inside Hogwarts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Master Pitsley and Cursebreaker Weasley also make frequent visits to the castle. I'm sure we can trust their head of house, and believe McGonagall is also on our side. Apart from getting Dumbledore thrown out on his ear, I don't think we can make that situation much safer." Both Grangers were keen to know if that was a possibility. Barchoke did his best to explain the situation. "Dumbledore, for all his faults, is a very powerful and clever wizard. He's become so used to everyone around him doing exactly what he wants. We kind of caught him on the hop a bit. I'm willing to bet he instigated that entire incident with Skeeter, just as I'm willing to bet he'll have covered his tracks. Some of his earlier moves were stupid, born out of overconfidence. He won't make the same mistake again. I just don't understand how one person could end up holding so much power. I think it comes down to laziness again, Emma. They've gotten so used to asking someone else what to do. We are reaching the stage where senior ministerial officials can barely think for themselves. Dumbledore has been repeatedly offered the job as Minister of Magic, but continually turns it down. The minister can be held accountable when things go wrong. Those manipulating the minister will escape any unpleasantness like that, and usually have a hand in choosing the sacked minister's replacement. There is no shortage of people every bit as stupid and just as easily manipulated as Fudge, all willing to do anything to take his place as Minister of Magic. It's a rotten and corrupt system, but those pulling the strings certainly don't want changes being made. I want some changes made. This makes us look like incompetent assholes. Albus then inquired just what changes the minister wanted made. The lad kills a troll, saves 3 students and the Hogwarts healer, yet doesn't even earn a house point. The goblins give him a golden helmet for chasing a ghost out the bloody castle. The boy who lived, standing on the steps of Gringotts and talking about how honored he is to receive an award from the goblins, has seen the ministry inundated with owls. They all want to know why the person who rid us of Voldemort hasn't received as much as a ministerial thank you. He's the Hogwarts champion for Merlin's sake, yet neither the school or ministry receive one positive mention in 10 pages of the prophet dedicated to the boy. This state of affairs can't be allowed to continue. Albus had allowed Cornelius to get it all off his chest as the minister ranted and raved in the headmaster's office. He actually agreed with most of it. I am at a loss to see how we can turn this around. If Hogwarts or the ministry start showering the boy with trinkets and awards, it's going to stand out for exactly what it is. Us attempting to curry favor with Harry. He will see right through that, and may even refuse to accept. Imagine how embarrassing that would be. The goblins have won this battle hands down. I think we have to just acknowledge that, and continue the fight from another angle. You really can't be serious. Won't officially acknowledging this make the situation worse for us? I think you have to add your congratulations to Centurion Crow. It might not be a bad idea to let slip the ministry were considering something similar, but don't want to be seen to be competing for the boy's affections, so have put it off to a later date. I shall approach Minerva about the possibility of a special award to the school for his actions that day, presented at the leaving feast before Christmas. She has a better understanding of Crow and can determine whether the lad will accept before we let any announcements slip to the press. Cornelius was beginning to understand the angle this crafty old wizard was suggesting, so we play it as if the ministry were in the process of recognizing the boy who lived's achievements. But the goblins stole a march on us. We congratulate the lad because the award is well deserved, and will revisit our options to add our further congratulations in the future. Exactly. Sometimes the only option left is to doff your hat to an opponent in appreciation of the skill they displayed, also showing your determination to win the next encounter. I think this is one of those situations. As to how we win the next one, all I can say is I'm working on it. Cornelius drew comfort from this, not knowing Dumbledore hadn't a clue what to do next. Another coup like that for the goblins, and I fear the battle could be lost. I've already had to publicly thank the goblins for doing such a good job in raising the lad. The boy who lived standing there dressed as a goblin with a witch beside him, dripping in priceless goblin jewelry, is a very powerful image, especially since the goblin hierarchy were all lined up behind him, showing support for his award. It's going to appear to the magical population of Britain as if Harry Potter has deserted us. That is a state of affairs neither of us could politically survive. One more article like this, and we might not have a hat to doff. Albus once again found himself agreeing with the minister. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise though. The one thing Fudge excelled at was judging public opinion, and shifting his own position to keep Cornelius Fudge on the right side of it. Hogwarts was buzzing when Harry and Hermione returned. Padma immediately began teasing about having epaulettes on a Hogwarts robe. Hermione shot that down before it could go any further. Well, I think they are handsome, and a lot more practical than some badge saying prefect or Quidditch captain. Logic like that ended the teasing, though Padma just switched to what else they were up to in their time out of Hogwarts. It was almost a relief when they all needed to head to herbology. By lunchtime, it was as if they had never been away. Bill watched his students leave the classroom, and couldn't fail to notice Dumbledore waiting to enter. He had no intention of listening to the old wizard today. The supposed interview with Harry printed in the Prophet had sent chills up his spine. Had he not reported to Barchoke that Dumbledore managed to get that information out of him, Bill would currently be unemployed, homeless, and a promising career destroyed. He wouldn't have to fake anger in this confrontation. Albus entered and shut the door, only to be met with hostility. I'll save you the trouble of spouting whatever words you had prepared. I have nothing whatsoever to say to you and refuse to play these games anymore. Games? You think this is a game? Bill didn't back down an inch. I know it's not a game. These are real people's lives that are being affected here. To you, though, we're all just pieces in a game where you have elected yourself the main player. All this greater good pish and sacrifices have to be made shit. You can go and drown in your own stinking manipulations, Headmaster. I have no intention of making any sacrifices for the greater good of Albus Bloody Dumbledore. Bill was pushing past the headmaster when Albus grabbed his arm. This has nothing to do with what I want. I'm trying to save our world from changes that would destroy it. The curse breaker jerked his arm out of the headmaster's grip. Before I took this assignment, I spent my days working in tombs of people who couldn't adapt to change. They were the gods of their day, with the power of life and death over millions. Now all that is left are some piles of stone, impressive piles of stone to be sure, but their way of life is gone forever. Dumbledore seized on this analogy. If we allow things to continue, Hogwarts could be nothing more than rubble in a few generations. Our way of life is under attack from all sides. It's now more important than ever that we all stick together. My problem with that statement is we're all supposed to stick together and do whatever Albus Dumbledore wants. What gives the headmaster of a school the right to determine the direction our way of life has to proceed? I have no intention of blindly following someone whose motives are at best questionable and whose actions are borderline criminal. This was not going the way Albus had planned. If he thought about it, very little had gone to plan recently. So you would rather align yourself with the goblins than your fellow wizards? I'm aligning myself with Harry, That just happens to be the side the Goblin Nation are supporting too. I would rather put my trust in that young man than be a mindless follower of the self-proclaimed leader of the light. Bill had his hand on the door before Albus dropped any and all pretense. You claim to support Harry yet were involved in a major breach of security against the lad's safety. I wonder what your goblin masters would make of that information, should it find its way to them. It was you who passed the information on to Skeeter. Dumbledore thought he had his man now. But I wouldn't have been able to, if you hadn't told me about the proposed visit beforehand. I truly am sorry to do this, William, but you leave me no choice. I desperately need information. If you won't cooperate, then perhaps your replacement will be a bit more accommodating. Bill's eyes were boring into the old wizard. It was a confident Dumbledore who was standing in front of him. The Cursebreaker could see that Albus thought he was in a win-win position, time to end his delusions. It was also time to admit to himself he was shite at this spy crap. There was just too much of the Weasley temper in him to be able to play nice with people like Dumbledore. You're a learned wizard, headmaster, so I will leave you with a simple puzzle. Rearrange these words into a well-known phrase, off, fuck. With that, Bill left the classroom, slamming the door behind him, leaving behind a surprised and confused Dumbledore. Harry was sitting at dinner talking with his friends, attempting to explain some of the muggle things he'd seen at the Grangers to Padma and Neville, while Hermione smilingly looked on. It was such a pleasant scene. Bill was loath to interrupt. A few whispers in Harry's ear drew a nod of understanding, and his friends could see playful Harry slip away, being replaced by the persona that was Centurion Crow. Bill patted Harry on the back before taking his leave. No one in the hall thought anything of him approaching and talking with his students. It was naturally Hermione who asked Harry what was going on. Oh, just as we suspected, Dumbledore has been playing games again. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to use this. The headmaster, entering the hall from a side door and taking his place at the staff table, appeared to make Harry's mind up. Before he could rise, though, Hermione's hand clamped on his leg. Are you sure about this, Harry? He smiled at her. No, but I shouldn't be in any danger. I'm far better confronting him in the hall, with McGonagall and Master Flitwick here. Couldn't we send for Master Sharpshard too? He lifted her hand off his leg and kissed her knuckles. Hermione Granger, you're actually developing a goblin sense of humor. Harry stood and strode to the front of the hall. He attracted attention most of his time in Hogwarts, but almost every pair of eyes must have been watching him by the time he reached the staff table. Harry didn't bother with any preliminaries. Dumbledore, you told that Skeeter reporter I would visit my parents' graves on Halloween. The silence that followed those words drew out until Snape actually broke it. Mr. Crow, that is a pretty serious allegation to make. Do you have any proof? It's Centurion Crow, sir. And yes, I do. Cursebreaker Weasley let slip to the headmaster where I would be going, and then this despicable old bastard just tried to blackmail my tutor into passing over more information. He admitted telling Skeeter where I would be, before threatening to report how he learned the information to my father, if Cursebreaker Weasley didn't do what Dumbledore told him to. Minerva practically had steam coming out her ears at that revelation. Do you know what Mr. Weasley's answer was? Yes, Professor. I believe he told the headmaster to fuck off. This drew some laughter and had a pair of red-headed twins up on the Gryffindor table doing a jig of delight. Harry wasn't finished yet, though. For 10 years I was safe within Gringotts walls. I haven't been here 10 weeks yet, but it has been one attack after another. First evening, you attempted to have me renounce my goblin upbringing, while at the same time having Voldemort sitting at the staff table. Add in trolls, bullies and Death Eaters. Getting the picture, headmaster. Then when I step outside Hogwarts, you tell someone exactly where we'll be. You endangered not only me but Miss Granger too. Dumbledore finally spoke. Am I to take it that Mr. Weasley's attempts to save his job by slandering me are being believed? Cursebreaker Weasley is a wizard with honor and integrity, two qualities you are sadly lacking in. He also reported the incident to my father on the day it happened. We just didn't think you would stoop so low. We already knew you were behind the supposed interview. Attempting blackmail just confirmed it. I am very happy with the defense tutor my father found me. Cursebreaker Weasley will not be going anywhere. Minerva felt she had to intervene before this escalated any further. Centurion Crow, I'm sorry, but calling the headmaster a despicable old bastard is against school rules, and will earn you another detention with me. Rest assured, though, I agree with your assessment that whoever released this information endangered 2 Hogwarts students. I shall be reporting the matter to the DMLE and the Hogwarts Board of Governors. Harry nodded respectfully to McGonagall, fully aware that the detention would be nothing more than another tutoring session. I understand, Professor, and like any other student will obey Hogwarts rules. Please inform both of those bodies I would be quite happy to speak with them on this matter. May I ask that you make this sooner rather than later? My father's patience with Albus Dumbledore is pretty much exhausted, and both Hermione and I understand French well enough that attending Beauxbatons would not be a problem. As Harry was heading back to his seat, McGonagall called out to him, Centurion Crow, nice to have you back. It would be a sad day for Hogwarts if you and Miss Granger left. A slight nod of his head was all the indication he gave that he had heard, though the students he passed to reach his seat could all see he was smiling. Both Harry and his father knew it was more likely to be a series of body blows that would lead to Dumbledore's eventual downfall, rather than one knockout punch. The headmaster was sitting at the table reeling as another scheme had not only failed, but spectacularly blown up in his face. Dropping in the line about Beauxbatons would hopefully muzzle him for a while and give the goblin plans time to bear some fruit. Hermione was just glad to see Harry make it back to her without any weapons being drawn, though Percy had to restrain his twin brothers when Dumbledore attempted to push the blame onto their eldest sibling. The name Dumbledore had taken a bashing amongst the Weasleys, and one glance around the hall was enough to see it was Harry's version of events that was being believed. Severus certainly believed Albus would attempt to blackmail Bill Weasley to basically become his spy. The potions master only wished that he had been in a strong enough position to deliver the same answer to Dumbledore all those years ago. He had studied the Centurion Crow edition of The Prophet from cover to cover. All he could think of, though, was that Lily would be so proud of her son. Looking at that army behind him kindled hope in Severus that this boy might actually be capable of finishing the Dark Lord. It was now clear to anyone paying attention that Dumbledore was also firmly in Crow's sights, and set to fall if the potions master was any judge. Being the Slytherin that he was, he needed do something so that Severus Snape wasn't dragged down with either of the 2 wizards who had dictated his life since he was a teenager. The more he thought of Harry as Lily's boy, the more Severus found himself appreciating just what this boy could do. He had no idea Harry was about to make his life even better. They had hardly left the Great Hall when the Weasley twins approached the group of friends. Harry, we would like to thank you for defending our brother in there. Harry held up his hands to stop them saying any more. Guys, not only do we all like your brother, he's a brilliant teacher. Working for Gringotts comes with some pretty tight restrictions, but we also look after and reward our employees. Now I have a question to ask you. Can you two be serious? Of course we can. What do you think we are? A couple of jokers? Something tells me I could regret this. But what class do you two have on a Friday morning? Divination. Why? It suddenly hit George and he was down on his knees pleading, his twin only seconds behind. Hermione had also sussed just what was going on, and questioned Harry's choice. Are you sure about this, Harry? Of course I'm not, but I think I should give them a chance. Master Pitsley offered another couple of places. Who else could I choose? I couldn't pick a pair of Hufflepuffs or Slytherins without upsetting the rest. Same with Gryffindor, though I honestly don't think any of their first years are up to all the work involved. Sorry, Padma. No problem, Harry. Parvati would be the first to admit she doesn't enjoy studying. Harry once more turned his attention to the twins. Okay, guys, but you need to get McGonagall to agree to this, and Snape. Harry was suddenly up in the air and being twirled around as both twins had him in a hug. Hermione would have been proud of. The whoops of joy soon drew an audience, and a fair bit of laughter. Both twins gently lowered Harry back to his feet before shaking his hand. We won't let you down, Harry. Most of our pranks are potions-based. We understand this is a life-changing opportunity for us. Reserve an extra 2 places at your study table, Neville. We're off to see McGonagall." As they skipped along the corridor, it was a worried Hermione who expressed a thought most of them shared. "Oh dear, I wonder if Master Pitsley will know what hit him." "Hermione, where do you think I learned to brew the potion I used on Snape?" "Master Pitsley knows more prank potions than anyone else in the country. They are just more subtle than donkey ears and the like that the twins seem so fond of. With goblin humor, sitting at a formal dinner and having your victim loudly letting one rip is considered the height of hilarity. Okay, I need to write home and make sure we have a good selection of comedy tapes for Christmas. You need to learn a different definition of funny." Harry's eyes almost glowed at this. "You mean there are more videotapes than the ones you already have?" "Thousands, Harry, with new ones released almost weekly." This had a wide smile on Harry's face, and caused laughter amongst the friends. Bill didn't find any laughter when he entered his sister's room. Instead, he found a young girl staring into a mirror with eyes red and swollen from crying. "Mum said you've been upset, Ginny. Do you want to talk about it?" As her brother's arm went around her, Ginny leaned into him as the tears once more began falling. "You tried to warn me, didn't you?" Ginny indicated the prophet pictures lying scattered on her bed. "How can I compete with that? How can any girl compete? She's like a princess on his arm, and he's already madly in love with her." Bill hated to see his sister like this, but thought Ginny might finally be coming to her senses. He wanted to discover how she arrived at this conclusion, though. She reached over for a picture that was showing definite signs of wear. Ginny had obviously studied it quite a bit. "Just watch and you'll see him glance at her, making sure she's okay." Her smile back practically has his eyes sparkling. "You told me they were close friends, but you don't look at a friend like that. She's beautiful, so smart and already speaks gobbledygook." Little Ginny Weasley never stood a chance. She cried some more before asking Bill a question. "You didn't go to Hogwarts this weekend, wasn't Harry there?" They stayed with Hermione's parents a few nights, but both stayed at Harry's too. "She stayed at Gringotts, is that even possible?" "Hermione is a friend to the Goblin Nation that gives her all different kinds of privileges." Bill could feel Ginny's tears soaking into his shirt as his sister clung to him, realizing that her dreams would never be more than that. He held her close and let Ginny cry it out. It was a while before she actually spoke. "Will you still introduce me to him? Are you sure that's something you want to do?" He could feel Ginny nodding her head as it was still buried in his chest. "I think I need to see it for myself. At least now I know what to expect. I'm going to be at Hogwarts with him for 6 years, perhaps we could be friends." Bill agreed to that, delighted that his favorite sister appeared to be coming to her senses. "Just remember what I said. No boyfriends until you're at least 26. He'd hoped for a smile but had to settle for her holding him tighter. It was her first steps on the right road. Padma had gone to bed, leaving Harry and Hermione sitting together on a sofa in their study area. "So, are you glad to be back?" "It was quite the few days." "Now that's an understatement, Harry. I loved my time at Gringotts with you, but getting to spend some time with my mum and dad was just wonderful. Knowing we'll all be together at Christmas has already got me so excited, and I told you my parents would love my best friend." "Your parents were great. Sorry for springing that summer thing on you. It was something I had been thinking about and had barely gotten a chance to talk it over with my father. When your dad mentioned it, I didn't want him making arrangements before we meet again at Christmas." He found himself enveloped in a hug. "Only you, Harry, could apologize for arranging someone's summer holidays. I didn't think my mum could get any more excited at Christmas, but this year looks like topping all the others. I'm now going to have 2 friends staying and planning our summer holiday too." Hermione kissed him on the cheek. "Thanks, Harry, for everything. I'll see you in the morning for our run." Hermione headed up to her room, leaving a grinning Harry behind. It was a red-faced Harry and Hermione who were sitting in their history class. Professor Hobson had a goblin memory displayer and a crystal that contained the memory of Centurion Crow speaking from the steps of Gringotts. The player was a black pyramid-shaped object that the crystal slotted into the apex of, projecting the scene in about 1/8 scale, with sound. The scene ended as Ragnarok headed back into the bank. All eyes were once more focused on a stoic Harry. That attention was never going to last, though. not with the beautiful Professor Hobson in the class. The reason I have been showing this scene to all my classes is not to embarrass a certain pair of Ravenclaws, rather to show history in the making. Now I want to hear your answers to what you thought was historic about this event. As our acknowledged experts, Centurion Crow and Miss Granger will be asked to cover any points we may miss. Morag's hand was first to shoot up, quite an achievement considering all the boys were desperate to please their favorite professor. Hermione was the first non-goblin ever to witness a Centurion ceremony. Do you have a memory crystal with that on it, Professor? Correct, Miss McDougal, and sorry but no. Those ceremonies are wrapped in mystery and secrecy. Perhaps Mr. Crow could tell us something about it after we finish this. Anyone else? Some other suggestions were offered, including Lavender's most expensive collection of jewelry ever worn at the one time by a witch, before Neville had his hand up. I've met Harry's father, Barchoke, and I am tutored in potions by Master Pitsley. We all remember Master Sharpsard's visit to Hogwarts, but I don't think I've even seen a picture of the Goblin Director before. This earned Neville a big smile and a well done from Professor Hobson, making him blush. The fact that Mr. Longbottom recognizes so many goblins is practically historic in itself. The point he made, though, is correct. Until he appeared that day, no one outside Gringotts knew what he looked like. This is Director Ragnarok's first ever public appearance outside Gringotts, and the first time the director has had his photograph taken by a wizard. What have we missed, Miss Granger? Hermione's mind was still stuck on learning that all the classes were seeing the projection as part of their history course. No wonder Cho was drawing her daggers when Harry wasn't looking. This was far more graphic than any photograph. She would need to ask Harry about these projection pyramids. Her mum and dad would be blown away watching this. She snapped back to reality and had an answer already. Well, apart from being the youngest warrior ever to be granted Centurion status, Harry is also the first warrior not goblin-born to achieve this great honor. Once more correct, but not exactly what I was looking for. Okay, Mr. Crow, it's left to you to tell us why this was really an historic occasion. An historic occasion that could one day affect us all. He didn't disappoint. Madam Bones talking with Director Ragnarok is the first official contact between the Ministry and the head of the Goblin Nation in over 350 years. This drew a loud reaction from Amelia's niece. What? How is that possible? It's actually quite simple, Susan. The Ministry decrees we must contact them through the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. For Gringotts leaders to officially contact this department would mean we accepted them classifying goblins as mere magical creatures, something I can guarantee you will never happen. Susan Bones at least had an inkling of how the Ministry worked and wondered how the goblins had gotten around this problem. She asked and Harry once more supplied the answer. Oh, every month the bank clerk with the lowest Gringotts approval rating gets to take a folder full of documents to the Ministry. Since nothing has been done about the past points raised or complaints made, we are not even sure if anyone actually reads them. Every month now, at least one of those documents will be bogus. A recipe for dragon stew, the best technique for cutting toenails, complete with clippings as proof, that kind of thing. There was even a competition at school once to see who could come up with the best idea. The winner was chosen to be that month's bogus entry. The Ministry think they're fooling us while we're quietly having a chuckle. Goblin's sense of humor, which is almost impossible for any non-goblins to see the funny side of. Harry looked in the direction of his friends. Believe me, I have tried. I think modesty is also preventing Centurion Crow from elaborating on a point we touched on. The entire Goblin leadership was standing publicly and squarely behind his appointment to this post. The message this very public display sends out is that the Goblins support a child born to a witch and wizard being appointed to one of the highest posts in their nation. That boys and girls is history right there. In a very public way, the Goblins are showing that they see no difference between us. It is only our attitudes that define differences. Draco was desperate for this professor to notice him, so just had to state what he thought was obvious. Professor Hobson, Centurion Crow, is different. He is clearly not a goblin. Okay, Mr. Malfoy, let me ask you this. I'll even open the question up to the entire class. Do you think the Goblin Nation would award a Dementor Centurion status? What about a dragon? Griffin? Acromantula? What's an acromantula, Professor? Imagine a tarantula the size of Hagrid and you won't be far away from describing an acromantula. She was interrupted by Ron Weasley falling off his chair, giving Draco a chance to once more compete for her attention. The answer to all of those would have to be no. It still doesn't tell us why Centurion Crow is different. All those things I mentioned come under the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures portfolio, as do the goblins. She loved teaching for this moment, when you could see young minds begin to make connections for themselves. Now if we can see what's wrong with that, why can't the Ministry? The answer is simple. They don't want to. The British Ministry of Magic is one of the few magical governments in the world where sentient magical beings are still treated like mere beasts. She let this sink into the young minds before continuing. My job here is not to cram a bunch of names and dates into your heads, more to get you realizing that history is all around us every day. A very wise Muggle actually produced a quote that has kind of become my mantra: those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We are still going to focus on specific historical events, but dig deeper into each in an attempt to discover what was really going on. Only when you understand that can you hope to avoid making the same mistakes. The young Swedish professor could see that made sense to her students. She hoped the next bit did too. I think one of the main reasons the history syllabus at Hogwarts was allowed to deteriorate to the sorry state it was in is that the ruling governments of the day didn't want their actions studied too closely. Every history course I've ever seen includes some relatively modern events in it. The professor paused, wondering just how far she could take this with first years. She decided this was something they really needed to know. Over a decade ago, magical Britain reached a condition that was a mere step away from civil war. The general belief is that this was fought by purebloods wishing to take what they considered their rightful places and rule the country. Utter rubbish. The Death Eaters were a bunch of terrorists attempting to overthrow a country's legal government, with the rest of the magical world monitoring the situation closely in case they had to intervene. Don't get me wrong, the other governments weren't about to rush to Britain's aid, rather end the problem here before it could spread to their countries. The young professor was used to her classes hanging on her every word. She wondered, though, who would ask the first question about the next revelation. Propaganda played a large part in the Dark Lord's strategy. Personally, I think he copied a lot of the German ideas from the Second World War. Replace Aryan with the word pure blood and most of the ideas are the same. Hermione's hand was up in a flash, getting a grin from her teacher. Professor, my friends are pure bloods, and a goblin. The point is, none of them know anything about Hitler or his plans for a master race. How could this Dark Lord know about it? 10 points to Ravenclaw for getting right to the heart of the matter. Miss Granger, the answer though is surprisingly simple. The Dark Lord is not a pure blood. This caused uproar in the class until the professor held her hand up for silence. When I tell you something, I don't want you to instantly believe me. I want you to do research and actually try to prove me wrong. What you need for that, though, are facts, not hearsay. She pointed her wand at the board and the name Tom Marvolo Riddle wrote itself. The letters then shuffled to reveal, I am Lord Voldemort. The Dark Lord was nothing of the sort. Being clever with anagrams does not bestow a lordship on you. His mother was an unmarried, impoverished pureblood who died giving birth to her son, but his father was a Muggle. Young Tom spent his pre-Hogwarts years in a Muggle orphanage. Records of his Muggle school attendance and even some report cards still exist. You can check the Hogwarts roll and see he was a Slytherin, head boy too. Neville's jaw matched those of the majority of his classmates in that it was practically hitting the floor. That was before he turned and spotted Harry sitting there unconcerned. You knew. It's vital that you know your enemy, Neville. Professor Hobson had a lot more revelations for this class. Now, having established his true identity, it's important to discover the real aims Tom had. Quite simply, this self-styled lord wanted to rule the world, and would go to any lengths to realize his ambition. Seeing where all the wealth and political power was held, He aligned himself with the pure bloods. Not all bought into his claims, though, but Tom had an answer for that too. He coined the term blood traitor, classing any pure blood who opposed him as such. Again, this drew gasps from her students. Things like this just weren't talked about in mixed company. Traitor is a very emotive word. Even in Muggle Britain, the act of treason could still see you hanged. The Treason Act hasn't been used for over 50 years, but it's still part of their laws. Some of the most eminent magical members of this country were labeled blood traitors, simply because they opposed this maniac. This gave families they had been close to for generations the perfect excuse to stand back and do nothing, while their fellow pure bloods were almost wiped out. Families like Bones, Longbottom, Potter, Abbott, and many more all lost people to this maniac and his followers. There were some moist eyes now, as this was history that struck close to home, but Professor Hobson wasn't finished yet. "Miss Granger, sorry to keep picking on you, but I need someone with a pre-Hogwarts Muggle education like Tom's to answer this. Can you think of any Muggles who would dress in costumes with masks to victimize a specific group of people?" The image popped into Hermione's head instantly. The Ku Klux Klan. They promoted white supremacy. A flick of the professor's wand and a Klan figure was drawn on the board, alongside a Death Eater. Aryan supremacy, white supremacy, pure blood supremacy. Are we seeing a pattern here? Tom Riddle is an immensely powerful wizard, and also a very clever one. Taking what he had learned from both sides of the magical divide, he fabricated an entire persona. Here was a wizard who had nothing but almost ended up ruling Britain. No wealth, take someone else's, no old family name, make one up. No blood status, who's to know? He set wizard upon wizard for his own gains, and almost wiped out a way of life. Pansy nervously raised her hand and spoke when asked to. "Professor, aren't you afraid what could happen to you for saying this?" "Miss Parkinson, when you're afraid of the truth, then you're living a lie. These facts are taught in most of Europe's magical schools. Should Tom or his followers attempt to return, I for one will be standing against them. I will do so of my own free will, though it doesn't help that your ministry would have me reporting to the same department as Centurion Crow here. Now for homework." She stopped because a hand had shot into the air. "Yes, Miss Brown?" "Professor, you said when we were finished we could ask Harry about the Centurion ceremony. Are we finished?" Henrika Hobson had thought the material she was covering today might have been a bit advanced for these students. She was very pleased to see she had reached most of them, though Miss Brown's attention was clearly focused elsewhere. The young professor glanced toward Harry. "Centurion, I am not asking you to reveal any secrets, but could you tell us anything, even about the position of Centurion? This is merely a request, please don't feel you have to." "Professor, I would hate to trivialize one of the most important history lessons we've ever had." "It's quite all right, Centurion. I think the class would appreciate ending the lesson with some lighter material." Harry glanced around the classroom, seeing some tearful and frightened faces. The professor invited him to the front of the class, and he went. "The position of centurion is an ancient one. They existed long before the Roman armies used the term for a squad commander. It's not really a fair comparison since I don't have a squad of warriors." Professor Flitwick mentioned Order of Merlin and Muggle knighthoods, neither of which is really close. The medieval knights of old are probably the nearest things I can think of to compare a centurion with. We live our lives by a strict code of honor, and our blades are always ready to defend the nation. Tracy wanted to confirm what she was hearing. "Are we talking about Knights of the Round Table here, Harry, King Arthur, that kind of knight?" "Well, Merlin was a friend of the Goblin Nation, as is Hermione, so I don't think that should be too surprising." This had his best friend blushing, as all eyes were now on her. In magical Britain, any comparison to Merlin was a great honor. Lavender, though, had another question. "Do you wear a suit of armor too?" "I carry my armor with me at all times. Goblin armor is different from the suits you'll see dotted around the castle." Harry suddenly realized everyone would now want to see it. He shook his head before making his way back to his desk and kicking off his shoes. When the robe came off and landed on the desk, Professor Hobson interrupted. Centurion, just what are you doing? I assumed the class would want to see my armor. I like these shoes and this shirt. I destroyed a few before getting the hang of this. My practice tunic is dragonhide and can cope with the transfiguration. As he unbuttoned his shirt, the witches were now ogling Harry's exposed torso, but not for long. His armbands suddenly started to expand. A metallic lattice began to spread over Harry's body like a second skin. In a matter of seconds, his golden chainmail armor covered every square inch of his body, with only his face still exposed. A Hogwarts uniform wasn't designed to let armor grow under it. Shirts tend to rip unless loosened, and shoes burst at the seams. Terry was looking at Harry in awe. Can you still fight in that? It looks dead heavy and cumbersome. He glanced toward Hermione. Should we give them a demonstration? I've never fought in a skirt before. You might have to one day. An enemy won't allow you time to change clothes. Henrika established control of the situation immediately, wanting to know exactly what was being proposed before it went any further. Just what are you suggesting, Centurion? Sorry, Professor, I should have asked your permission first. I'm teaching Hermione how to use a sword. I was suggesting a quick practice to show how my armor performs as I fight, with wooden practice swords, of course. Hermione took her goblin shield out her pocket, expanded and slipped it onto her arm, just as the bell rang for the end of class. This drew groans of disappointment from the class, though Harry did supply an answer to Terry's question. The armor isn't really heavy, though. It is taking a bit of getting used to. It feels a bit like moving in water at the moment. I use it in our sword practice, and am building up to wearing it while running. I hope to have it mastered by the Christmas holidays. Speaking of holidays, Centurion, I'm hearing you might have just changed my summer plans. Sorry, Professor, that was not my intention. I know you'll be busy at the start, but you would be more than welcome to join us near the end of it. Why, thank you, Centurion. That is a very generous offer. I might just take you up on. I can just as easily write lying on a beach as stuck in an underground room. As Harry was putting on his robe, he once more received jealous stares, but this time from the boys. He could feel Hermione bristling with indignation on his arm as they left the class, though had no idea what he'd done to deserve it. Neville gave him his first clue. Are you really going to spend part of the summer holidays with Professor Hobson on a beach? Harry decided to go with his usual approach. The truth. As you've just seen, Professor Hobson is a brilliant teacher. To lure her to Hogwarts, my father had to offer something she couldn't get elsewhere. The professor will be spending her holidays with us in Gringotts. Hermione stopped walking at this, causing Harry to inquire what was wrong. Her reply of nothing clearly wasn't right. I thought you'd be pleased. This is what you wanted. Harry, if this is more goblin humor, I'm not seeing the funny side here. I thought we agreed it had to be an outsider, someone who could highlight the differences. I also thought she did a brilliant job of that just now. Harry, you're not making any sense. My father got permission from the director to allow Professor Hobson to stay with us while she studies our culture before writing a book on goblins. It was only this unique opportunity that convinced her to leave her last school and come to Hogwarts. She will spend the next few summers at Gringotts. It was like watching a light switch on for Hermione as she realized just what was happening. A broad smile spread across her face as she once more started walking with Harry. Are we okay? Of course we are, Harry. I'm really sorry about that. I was just being silly, but we talked the problem out and got it sorted. I think it was watching the rest of the boys practically fall over themselves to please Professor Hobson and then imagining her coming on holiday with us. I said I was being silly, didn't I? Here was the information Harry was missing, and he was soon smiling himself. Hermione Granger being silly, I don't believe it. It's Professor Hobson's Vila heritage that has all the boys tipping over themselves. It doesn't affect goblins. This raised a number of questions for Hermione, but she chose to leave them for later. The young witch felt she'd made enough of a fool of herself already today. The jealousy had engulfed her without warning or any real cause, on either Harry or the professor's part. She was getting used to other students hitting on Harry, but Hermione thought it may have been triggered by the fact she could never hope to compare with the stunningly beautiful professor. The very idea of being on a beach with the blonde witch sent shivers of dread through her young body. A smiling Harry on her arm was quickly banishing those thoughts away and showing them for what they were, pure silliness. They reached the Great Hall and had hardly sat down when they discovered just how quick the Hogwarts rumour mill actually operated. Roger appeared to have been delegated to ask the question that every male Ravenclaw suddenly wanted to know the answer to. "Harry, did you really invite Professor Hobson on holiday with you?" Again Harry went with the truth. "She's working on a project for my father over the holidays. Since we'll be on a beach, I didn't see anything wrong with inviting her along too." One of the sixth-year boys shouted down the table to Harry, "Is your father looking for anyone else to help with the project? I'll work for free." This generated some laughter, though Roger summed it up perfectly. "Merlin, Harry, if you thought you were popular before, this is going to eclipse everything. What's getting out of Snape's potions class compared to time on a beach with Hottie Hobson?" There was no laughter this time, just a lot of wizards letting their imaginations run away with them, and a lot of witches scowling at them for doing so. But Harry sat unconcerned, chatting with Hermione and Padma over lunch. Settled the last of his best friend's nerves, and left Hermione wanting to hug the life out of him. There were no smiles in the private conversation Harry had later that night. Getting Goblin's suspicions confirmed by Hogwarts meant that there was now a fair bit of planning to be done. The twins were rather upset when they discovered their eldest brother was in the castle, but would miss their game against Slytherin. "Sorry guys, but I am working. If the game's still going when our lesson finishes, I'll certainly be there to cheer Gryffindor on." They both looked to Harry for help, only to be disappointed. "Sorry too, guys. Training comes first. Your brother is a brilliant teacher and we need all the defense training we can get." Bill led the four friends out the hall just as the Quidditch captains were calling on their teams to make their way down to the pitch. The door of the classroom had hardly closed when Harry turned to his three friends. "I'm sorry for deceiving you like this, but there is no lesson today. There's a mission I must carry out inside Hogwarts, and with the entire school out at the Quidditch pitch, this is the perfect time." Hermione was on him in a flash. "This obviously has to be secret, but please tell me it's not dangerous. Cursebreaker Weasley and I are going to look for something. The only danger we can see is the possibility there may be some magical traps around the object, something that he deals with on a daily basis." "Oh good. That means we can come and help?" Bill started laughing. "And that is why I don't gamble with goblins. Harry here wanted to bet me that would be your response, but I wasn't buying into that." While this was greeted with a smile from Hermione, Padma wanted to know exactly what they were signing up for, and just what they were looking for. "The item is the diadem of Rowena Ravenclaw." This drew gasps from the two female claws. Padma found her voice first. "I'll say this for you, Harry, you don't do things by half." Spotting Neville's confused appearance, Padma helped their Gryffindor friend out. "It's a tiara, Neville, something like the one Hermione wore to the Centurion ceremony. Our Harry here is conveniently ignoring the fact that it's been lost for centuries, and believe me, people have been looking for it. The Centurion here expects to get his hands on it while a school Quidditch match is taking place. Rather ambitious, don't you think?" This drew a smile from Harry. "Not if you know what room it's in. Apparently, though, the room is vast and full of junk. We can split into 2 teams of 3, but only Cursebreaker Weasley is to go anywhere near the item." This again drew Hermione's attention. "Why, is it dangerous?" "It could be. The last person to handle it was Tom Marvell Riddle. We're taking no chances and it will be sent straight to Gringotts to ensure it's safe." Neville had a couple of questions of his own. "Is the castle okay with you removing it, and how do you make 2 teams of 3 when there's only 5 of us?" "Hogwarts told me where it was, Neville." Harry didn't need to answer the next part as Professor Hobson entered. Hermione couldn't stop running her free hand up and down her new robe. Harry had been so sure they would want to accompany him that not only did he invite Professor Hobson along, he had protective dueling robes made for the 3 of them. Like Harry's tunic, they were all made from dragon skin. Her other hand was of course on Harry's arm, that they had stopped and Harry was currently talking to a stone wall. Had Hermione slightly worried? She should have known better. Hogwarts. Your champion needs access to the Room of Hidden Things. A large oak door appeared to melt out the stonework and they entered a cavern full of everything. This was where Bill took charge. Padma, Neville, you're both with me. Everyone get your dragon skin gloves on, and be very careful. If you see a tiara, do not approach and under no condition is anyone to touch it. Henrika, send up red sparks if any of your team spot it and we'll come running. Let's do this search in an orderly fashion, so that should we run out of time today, the search can continue when the next Quidditch match is scheduled. Hermione's eyes were scanning the vast cavern, and not just for a tiara. There is hundreds of years' worth of stuff in here. Some of this could be valuable. Harry noticed her eyes were fixed on an old bookcase as she said this. Yes, and some of it could be dangerous. This is a mission, Hermione. You need to focus. She nodded in understanding as they began to search the part of the room assigned to their team. Professor Hobson playfully nudged her before asking in a conspiratorial whisper, "Is he always this intense?" "Oh no, Professor, this isn't Harry being intense. Wait until we meet a troll, then you'll see intense." America was laughing at the young witch's comment. That was until she discovered Hermione wasn't joking. Perhaps she should have studied her job description more closely before accepting this post. Bill was beginning to think they would have to wait until the Ravenclaw-Hufflepuff match at the end of the month before resuming their search when a spray of red sparks lit the roof of the chamber. The trio quickly headed in the direction the spell had been cast from. The other team were standing well back, heeding Bill's warning, but Padma headed straight for it. Harry and Hermione were physically holding her back while Bill scanned the area. "It's emitting a powerful compulsion charm. I want everyone further back." The three friends and Professor Hobson soon had Padma out of range, earning an embarrassed apology. "I'm sorry, I just don't know what came over me. How come I was the only one affected?" Harry answered while watching the Cursebreaker work. "Hermione's bracelet would protect her, as would my armor. Neville's got his mind on other things." Neville was standing beside Professor Hobson with a goofy grin on his face, enticing giggles from both girls. Those stopped as Cursebreaker Weasley appeared to have disarmed any traps. He reached out and grasped the legendary item. As he put it into the container he'd brought with him specifically for this purpose, it was then slipped into his bag. As they were leaving the room, they found the Grey Lady and the Bloody Baron waiting on them. Harry immediately bowed to both. "My lady, your mother's diadem has been found. It will be taken to Gringotts, where the disgusting taint will be removed from it. Once restored to its former glory, it can make a triumphant return home." The ghost smiled for the first time in living memory. "Hogwarts is very pleased with the actions and deeds of her champion. A burden I have carried for centuries will soon be lifted. The House of Ravenclaw is in your debt." "There can never be a debt between us, my lady. That I am considered worthy for the house your mother founded is all the payment I will ever need." Bill was glancing around anxiously. "Harry, I think I should get this out the castle at once, before a meddling old headmaster pokes his crooked nose in." Henrika agreed. "Go, Bill, I will escort them back to the Great Hall, and cover should anyone inquire why we're up on the 7th floor." Bill left, but Helena had one more surprise for them. "Young champion, the room you have just left has the ability to become whatever you request. It's getting rather cold and dark to be running outside at the hour you both do. The room can provide you with somewhere light, dry and sheltered to run." "You mean the room can change to whatever I want?" "It's the room of requirements, so called because it can change to meet the user's requirements. You just need to tell the room what those requirements are." Harry bowed deeply once more. "That truly is a gift beyond measure. I offer you my thanks, Lady Helena." The Quidditch match was over and the Great Hall was full by the time they made it down. From the celebrations coming from the Gryffindor table, it was easy to see how the result of the game had gone. Neville was in no danger of being teased about missing the match. Walking into the hall in his new dueling robes was not the reason, though. It was the blonde professor at his side that halted any inclination to tease. Even the Quidditch-obsessed Oliver Wood would admit spending the morning with Professor Hobson was preferable to watching a mere school game. Minerva was sitting in her school apartment, drinking a cup of tea while reflecting on the busiest and most revolutionary term she could remember at Hogwarts. That this revolution could be laid at the feet of a green-eyed Ravenclaw was beyond doubt. Revolutionary was really the only word to describe the effect he'd had on Transfiguration. It was still a week to the Christmas holidays, yet her first years were already well into second-year Transfiguration tasks. That they didn't use any of the prescribed spells or the specified wand movements left her unsure of what the future held. Here was a class who would ace the practical tests, but all fail the written papers, simply because they didn't use any of the prescribed coursework. They spent their time studying and practicing the actual magic involved, rather than writing essays on procedures they didn't use. Since even the slowest in the class were now well ahead of where they would normally be on her usual teaching schedule, what possible grounds did she have for objecting? Not that Minerva had any intention of doing so. The new history course was also having a big impact on the school, as was the professor teaching it. Henrika had earned Minerva's respect by standing toe-to-toe with Dumbledore and not backing down an inch. He'd quickly demanded she stop teaching the students about Voldemort, only to be refused in no uncertain terms. "I'm here to teach a curriculum pre-approved by my employer before I started. I will not have my students failing exams because the headmaster decides I should not pass on the relevant information to them. I would also like to point out that neither you nor Hogwarts are my employer. I work for the Lily Potter Foundation. Should you wish to change anything, you would need to contact them. I believe the foundation is currently administered by Gringotts' senior accounts manager, Barchoke." Minerva couldn't help but smile at that memory, or the effect that name had on the old wizard. Albus had stormed away after that. "Thwarted again" was the phrase that came to Minerva's mind. She had also noticed the young witch keeping the company of William Weasley when he was in the castle, much to the chagrin of the students. Felius was also walking just that little bit taller, with the prominence his house was currently enjoying. The head of Ravenclaw was also crossing swords with the young centurion in an effort to teach him how to fight with blade and magic at the same time. He proclaimed Harry's control of both was growing at an exceptional rate. Even Severus was less dour than usual. With Severus, that was probably as good as it was going to get. His acceptance of Harry as Lily's son seemed to have done wonders to his demeanor. The Weasley twins leaving his potions class would also go down as a red-letter day for the head of Slytherin. Even Albus appeared to have temporarily curbed his attempts to manipulate the lad. Perhaps his continual rebuffs were finally beginning to take their toll. Minerva doubted it though, and thought next week's presentation to Centurion Crow at the leaving feast would at least be entertaining. That white owl of Harry's was always delivering mail, so his father would be well aware of what was happening. The Gringotts' presence now in Hogwarts was also considerable. Albus appeared to think he was dealing with a young boy who could be easily swayed. He didn't seem to take into account the support team Harry had around him. Minerva would also consider that support team now contained 3 Hogwarts heads of houses. A knock at her door was just about to prove her wrong. She found a rather nervous Severus standing there. "Can I come in a moment, Minerva? I have a rather delicate matter I would like to discuss with you." Minerva invited him in. Rather than try and guess, she waited on Severus bringing the matter up. Just as well they would have been Dumbledore's age and she still wouldn't have guessed correctly. "I have something I would like you to pass on to Centurion Crow from me." Seeing that picture of him taking those flowers to his mother's grave and then setting up a foundation in her name set me thinking. As you know, Lily and I were as close as he and Miss Granger, before I ruined it. What I do have are years of memories that I feel her son should have. I arranged a lot of photographs I had of Lily into a small album. I would really appreciate it if you could pass them on to her only child. Minerva had to sit down at that revelation. "Of course I will, Severus. That is very thoughtful of you. I perfectly understand why you wouldn't have any pictures of Harry's father. Would you mind terribly if I added some to your gift?" Severus took a moment to think about Minerva's offer before nodding. As long as he didn't have to see them, that was something he could live with. He handed over the leather-bound album that had an embossed lily on the front before bidding Minerva a good evening. Rita Skeeter wasn't having a good evening. She wasn't having a good anything anymore. She had stood firm at her questioning by the DMLE, claiming a journalist had to protect their sources and methods. Her lawyer had charged a fortune to point out that Rita hadn't broken any laws, or at least they couldn't prove that she had. Those bastards at the Prophet had dropped her quicker than the presses could print extra copies announcing that very fact to the world. With no one else now willing to employ her, Rita was sitting in the corner of the leaky cauldron, all alone and nursing a drink at her own pity party. Her party was gate-crashed by a wizened old goblin with an exceedingly gruff voice. "You can sit there for the rest of your life feeling sorry for yourself, or you can pick your skinny ass up and get back at the bastards who did this to you." Rita sharply snapped back at the old goblin. "I don't recall asking for your opinion." A smile with many missing teeth now greeted Rita. "I wasn't offering my opinion, I was offering you a job." This instantly focused her attention, as did the small sack of money Whitefang dropped onto the table. "You possess an ability to obtain information no one else can get. The person I'm working for would like to see you use that ability on certain targets. He even has a project that involves writing. You interested?" The money rapidly disappeared into Rita's robes and she was soon following Whitefang out of the pub. Harry entered the great hall for the leaving feast and walked right into a storm of protest. The reason for this storm wasn't hard to ascertain. Harry was in his dress tunic and carried his helmet under his arm. A blue cloak cape, trimmed in bronze, completed his ensemble. Hermione was of course on his free arm. The source of this tropical depression of protest wasn't too difficult to spot either. The robes the headmaster was wearing would probably be deemed as too outlandish by Elton John. "Mr. Crow, that is not proper Hogwarts uniform. It's Centurion Crow, and this is proper attire for someone of my station to receive an award. To dress otherwise would be to demean both the award and the occasion." Dumbledore wasn't so easily swayed. He tried a different tactic. "This award is being presented to you as a Hogwarts student. Surely school uniform would be more appropriate for this occasion. When I was offered this award, it was presented to me as being a school occasion. On arrival, though, I can't help but notice the Minister of Magic is here, along with the press. Your inclusion of these outsiders alters this event to a formal occasion, which requires formal dress. Your alternative is to ask the outsiders to leave, and then I would gladly change. You can't have it both ways, Headmaster." Harry gave a rather wry smile at the dilemma he'd just dropped on Dumbledore. "In anticipation of you changing the conditions of the award presentation, I dressed appropriately." Albus decided to put his foot down. After all, this boy was a mere student and he was the headmaster. "I'm sorry, but I must insist you go and change. We will hold the beginning of the feast until you return." From previous experience, he should have realized how well this tactic worked on Harry. Albus discovered his mistake pretty quickly. "I am also sorry because, if my dress uniform is unacceptable, I will of course leave, though I won't be returning tonight. For a centurion to receive an award in the presence of a national leader and not be in the proper uniform could be construed as an insult. Therefore it is with regret I must decline your award." The first flash of the photographer's camera captured forever Dumbledore's expression as he was once more publicly told no in his own school. He also had no idea things were about to become much worse as his planned positive publicity perished right in front of his twinkling eyes. Harry had plans for a ceremony of his own design. "Hogwarts, your champion begs an audience." The four house ghosts made their way to the front of the hall as Harry donned his helmet. He then reached into his bag that Hermione was carrying. "Master Flitwick, could I have a moment of your time, please?" The diadem of Rowena Ravenclaw was sitting on a blue and bronze velvet cushion that Harry held in his outstretched arms. The tiara captured light from the hall and reflected it back in a kaleidoscope of colors as Rowena's fabled diadem majestically sparkled on its journey to the front of the now hushed hall. He knelt before the ghosts and offered the diadem up like a royal crown. "What was lost has been found. What was tainted has been cleansed. Your champion returns this precious artifact to its rightful home." The great bell of Hogwarts rang out once more. This, though, was no dong of doom. Here was the sweet chimes of celebration that spread throughout the entire castle. The Grey Lady made no attempt to hide her delight. Hogwarts is jubilant at your achievements, young champion, as am I. Professor Flitwick, can I ask you to accept my mother's diadem on behalf of her house? We will make arrangements for it to be publicly displayed so everyone can have a chance to see it before it returns to its rightful place in Ravenclaw Tower. Albus stood there, still as any statue, as the press practically fell over themselves in their desire to ensure they missed no detail of this unbelievably historic event. That this story was not the one they originally thought they would be covering mattered not a jot to them. It was glaringly obvious, though, that this wasn't a view shared by the minister. Cornelius's complexion almost matched his famous bowler hat as he sat there experiencing the worst thing in the world for a politician, being totally overlooked and ignored. What was really concerning Albus was the bold and reckless move of broadcasting this event to the country. He knew exactly what Harry meant by tainted. Here was the Horcrux that must have been hidden inside the castle, hidden right under his nose for all those years. He considered this a reckless move, very publicly providing the Dark Lord with proof at least one of his Horcruxes had been discovered and destroyed. That this had all happened in his school, again without his knowledge, worried Albus a lot more than the bad press they would get for Harry refusing his Hogwarts award. Dumbledore was actually hoping that in the furor over the diadem's return, this little fact may be overlooked. Albus almost overlooked Harry's next move. Even as he watched it, though, the headmaster wasn't sure if he actually believed what he was seeing. Harry approached the staff table and bowed deeply. Potion Master Snape, it is our custom that a precious gift should be reciprocated in kind. I could never dream of matching the gift you gave me and can only hope you'll consider this worthy. A slim but obviously ancient book passed between the two. The normally sneering persona of Severus Snape vanished like a wisp of smoke. This version wore a look of wondrous astonishment, currently matching the one displayed by Harry's still speechless head of house. Severus was also struggling for words. Where, how, this was thought lost forever. How in Merlin's name did you find a copy of this? A smiling Harry was reminding himself to thank Master Pitsley the next time they met. Like the diadem, sir, it's all a matter of knowing where to look. This had given Severus the time needed to regain his composure. He respectfully stood and performed the Centurion's salute before replying. Centurion, to the both of us, the subject in question is precious and irreplaceable, but this is still a priceless gift. I thank you and think she would be very proud of the young man her son is becoming. Harry took no insult at being described as a young man, instead accepting the compliment in the spirit it was offered. He sincerely returned the salute. That is more than enough for me, sir. I wish you a Merry Christmas. He strode past Dumbledore once more, not even acknowledging the headmaster before offering his arm to Hermione and leaving the feast, supposedly being held in his honor. Padma and Neville were hot on their heels, with the vast majority of their classmates deciding to show their support and follow on behind. Harry was heading for the room they now used when training in the morning. Harry, asking a corridor wall for a room in which to hold their Christmas feast, saw some funny looks heading in his direction. These were followed by gasps of astonishment as a door simply appeared. This was nothing, though, to their reaction upon entering the room. It sparkled and shone like some fairy tale ice palace, thankfully without the expected severe drop in temperature. The massive table constructed of this warm ice was rapidly filling with food from the Hogwarts kitchens. The barrel of ale immediately caught Hermione's attention. Is that what I think it is? My father sent it with Cursebreaker Weasley. He figured that since you loved it so much, our friends probably would too. It's been hidden in the kitchens since last weekend. You knew what the headmaster was going to attempt today. Hermione offered this more as a statement than a question. I have my sources, Hermione, and those sources warned me what he was up to. He didn't want it known that the Sorting Hat was passing what went on in Dumbledore's office to Lady Helena, keeping Harry one step ahead of the headmaster's plans. Padma was standing there with her mouth open. This looks nothing like the room we were in the last time. You should see it for our training in the morning. It's brilliant. Hermione, I don't care if the room was dripping with diamonds and gold. Nothing will get me up at that time to do exercises. Harry was busy inviting everyone else into the room. Grab a seat and help yourself to some food. Neville, Terry, Michael and Anthony, can you guys give me a hand dishing out some goblin ale for everyone? Terry just about summed the rest of the first year's thoughts up. Merlin, Harry, you certainly know how to throw a party. I was sure you would have something up your sleeve, but all this and ale too. Really impressed, mate. Hermione didn't want Harry getting a bad reputation. She decided to set everyone straight before rumors started to spread. Goblin ale is non-alcoholic. It's also the best thing I've ever tasted. Soon everyone was sitting and the goblin ale was passed around. They were all waiting to start and looking at Harry for permission. Hey, I'm not Dumbledore, no speeches here, just tuck in. So they did. McGonagall couldn't find the rest of the first years anywhere. All the ghosts would say was that they were still inside Hogwarts, perfectly safe and eating dinner. She walked with her Gryffindors from the Great Hall back to their tower. Curfew was approaching, and she wanted to see her missing first years in their dorm before retiring for the night. She heard her 5 lost cubs long before laying eyes on them. They were laughing, joking, and apparently saying goodnight to some people. They entered through the portrait hole and weren't perturbed in the slightest by her presence. In fact, the 2 girls couldn't wait to tell her what they'd been up to. Oh, Professor, you should have seen it. Harry spoke to a wall and then this wonderful room just appeared. It was gorgeous. We had a fantastic party. Harry even brought goblin ale into the castle. It's a bit like butterbeer, only much better. Neville was quick to defend his friend. There's also no alcohol in it, Professor. Did you have a good evening? Only years of practice stopped Minerva from smiling. She did have a stern reputation to maintain after all. Apparently not as good as yours. Now I want to see all of you heading for bed. The express leaves directly after breakfast. With a chorus of yes, Professor, a group of happy children headed up the stairs. Minerva was sure Albus would see this as evidence that Harry was gathering followers around him, just like a certain Tom Riddle had done all those years ago. Everyone else could see the situation for what it really was, an enigmatic young man making friends with his peers, but the headmaster could not accept the obvious explanation. Albus was worse than any pit bull sinking its teeth into something when he got an idea in his head. There was just no letting go. The only first years not at the alternative feast were Malfoy and his diminishing band of cronies, and of course Ronald Weasley. This meant there was a mixture of all houses at the party, and every blood persuasion she could think of. Minerva couldn't get over that every single one of them had all voluntarily walked out of the Great Hall, trusting that Harry would have made alternative arrangements. Add to that the lad was spending Christmas in his best friend's Muggle home, and Harry seemed to be going for inclusion, rather than exclusivity based on any form of blood status. They were all heading for their respective dorms when Harry leant into Hermione and spoke softly enough so that only she could hear. I need to speak to Susan Bones and pass on a gift from my father. Can you stick close and not ask any questions? Hermione agreed at once, but had a suggestion. Would you prefer me to ask her for a quick word? Harry's smile was all the answer she needed. Susan wasn't sure how she ended up staring into those intense green eyes from close range, but Harry mentioning her Aunt Amelia soon had her focusing on the matter at hand. Could you pass a message on to your aunt? This is very important and can't go anywhere near official channels. My father would like to speak with her at her earliest convenience. Harry handed over a small inlaid lacquered box. If your aunt enters Gringotts wearing this brooch, she will immediately be taken to see my father. This will save her having to draw attention to herself by asking for him by name. Please accept this brooch as a gift to the House of Bones, without obligation and irrespective of whatever your aunt decides to do. Susan recognized the language being spoken here, and also replied formally, on behalf of the House of Bones, I'm honored to accept this gift in the spirit it was offered. It was only then Susan's control slipped. Can I open it and take a look, Harry? Of course you can. Hermione thought, that's how she must have appeared when she first opened the box containing her bracelet. Susan's eyes nearly popped out her head before she quickly shut the box again. Oh, Harry, it's simply beautiful. I'll speak with Aunt Amelia the instant I get her alone. I assume this is something to do with her being head of the Auras. I'm pretty sure that's the case. All I know is my father wants to urgently speak with her. When he uses words like urgent, it must be important. We better get a move on too, otherwise we'll be out after curfew. Thanks again, Susan. They were walking quickly to Ravenclaw Tower. Hermione thought it would be all right to ask a question now, since it was just the two of them. Do you really not know what's going on? No, which has me slightly worried. You must have noticed, letters from my father are not written in English. Even with that security, though, he wouldn't take the chance of writing it down. That brooch will tell Madam Bones this is serious. A gift like that to House Bones is not to be sniffed at. Her wearing it into Gringotts will alert every goblin Madam Bones is under our family's protection, and see her service improve 100%. My father will probably fill us both in later. The journey home on the express couldn't have been more different from the one that delivered them to Hogwarts. Gone were the two lonely children reaching out to one another. In their place sat a young witch and goblin who were sharing the compartment with their friends. This time there was no searching up and down the train looking for the boy who lived. Everyone on the train knew who Harry Crow was, and Hermione Granger too. Now, when someone popped their head into the compartment, it was to wish them a good holiday and Merry Christmas. When it was once more just the four of them, Harry broached a subject he'd been struggling with. Padma, I know that, like me, you don't celebrate Christmas. I wanted to experience the full thing, though, so I asked Cursebreaker Weasley to explain it to me. I loved the idea of getting small gifts for your friends. This met a wave of protest that Harry only stopped by holding his hands up for silence. Hey, this matched the only written reference we could find to these customs. We could understand the gold bit, it was the frankincense and myrrh that had us really confused. Harry was once more interrupted, but this time by Hermione almost choking with laughter. Every time she looked at Harry it would start again, only him offering his handkerchief allowed the witch to get control. Thinking she must look a sight was enough to do it. Anyway, before being so rudely interrupted, Hermione showed her maturity by sticking her tongue out at him. I was about to ask for your help with a problem. It wasn't the gifts as such that caused the problem, rather who to get them for. You three were of course top of my list. Then I hit problems. I got our Ravenclaw yearmate sweets, but it was Parvati that gave me the biggest headache. He now had two young witches staring intently at him, which left Harry wondering if he'd gotten it wrong again. She's not just Padma's sister, but her twin. I feel quite bad that we seem to have monopolized all Padma's time, and now she's spending the holiday with us too. I've gotten Parvati a gift, yet I'm trying to avoid there being any misunderstandings why I did it. I'm still not 100% sure what I got wrong that morning after the troll, but Parvati's tears were real enough. I need help in avoiding a problem like that again. Padma glanced toward Hermione and her smile gave the unnecessary permission. She leaned over, hugging and then kissing Harry on the cheek. Harry, that is so thoughtful, thank you. If you want, I could give it to her and avoid any problems. It was a relieved Harry who reached into his bag and handed a wrapped present to Padma. She left to find her twin sister. Harry pulled another package out his bag and handed it to Neville. We won't see you until after Christmas, so I think it's best to give you this now. Neville opened the package to find a small goblin-made sheath knife. It had an ivory handle and a 3-inch razor-sharp blade, all enclosed in a reddish dragonhide sheath. It can be used to take plant cuttings or preparing potions ingredients. It's brilliant, Harry. Thanks a lot. Hermione was smiling and shaking her head at the same time. Harry, you continually surprise me. He smiled back at her. That's a good thing, right? Ginny was waiting with Bill on the platform, her new dress not quite long enough to hide the fact her knees were shaking with nerves. As the bright red engine pulled the carriages into the station, it took almost the same amount of Herculean effort for Ginny to remain standing by her brother's side. The desire to hide behind Bill was practically overwhelming the young witch. The students soon began pouring out from the carriages as hundreds of witches and wizards in high spirits erupted onto the platform. Ginny was focusing all her attention on spotting one particular student. Being the youngest of 7 children meant Ginny already had a well-honed ability for watching everything that was going on around her. being the smallest and female, saw her continually ignored and overlooked, thus providing even more opportunities for her to develop this skill. Living in the same house as Fred and George, this could also be considered a necessary survival technique. She soon spotted the smartly dressed boy with long black hair, the witch on his arm helping Ginny confirm his identity. She also noticed the Indian witch and another wizard who were remaining close. A stunningly beautiful Chinese witch practically ambushed the group as she attempted to claim Harry's attention. Even from this distance, Ginny could see her ploy was doomed to failure. Harry's body language had instantly shifted from relaxed to stiff formality, and both witches in his company clearly resented this intrusion. The little scene was soon shattered by the speedy arrival of another witch. This one had an entirely different interpretation of how an ambush should be carried out. She raced up to a clearly unsuspecting Harry and threw her arms around his neck. A quick greeting was followed by a kiss on the cheek. She rapidly disentangled herself before cheerfully greeting the rest of his friends and then dragging the Indian girl, who could only be her twin sister, away. Whatever the Chinese girl had planned, this clearly unscheduled intrusion destroyed her play as effectively as a brace of well-hit bludgers. She quickly mumbled something before departing, a distinctly unhappy witch. Saying a much more heartfelt goodbye to their other friend saw the pair start to make their way toward them. Even now, though, the number of people who warmly greeted the pair as they passed was impressive. A red-haired witch, who was clearly more developed than little Ginny Weasley, waving and smiling as they passed each other, also had the effect of allowing Ginny to finally say goodbye to her fantasy. Ginny wasn't sure if she even had the right to claim it as her fantasy anymore. It was painfully obvious most of the witches who got off the train harbored strikingly similar fantasies of their own toward Harry. She wondered how the girl on his arm coped with all the clearly unwanted attention. Ginny knew her Weasley temper would see her wanting to curse anyone who so blatantly flirted with someone she considered as hers. It was too late to hide now. They were here. A greeting to her brother was followed by the most gorgeous pair of eyes focusing on her, and Ginny finally understood Harry's popularity. When this boy focused his attention on her like that, Ginny's insides totally melted. She forgot all about the fame, wealth, and deeds. Here was someone you just had to get to know. "Hello, Cursebreaker Weasley. This must be the sister you were telling me about." "Hi, Harry." "Hermione, yes, this is Ginny, and she'll be going to Hogwarts in September." Ginny was suddenly faced with a hand held out in front of her, not necessarily the one she wanted, though. Ginny was learning firsthand, no pun intended, how Hermione coped with all the witches chasing Harry, and also that here was a witch who she didn't want to cross. "Hey Ginny, I'm Hermione. Bet you're desperate to get to Hogwarts. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Don't worry too much if you're not in Ravenclaw. We have friends in all 4 houses." Even in the short time she'd been watching them, Ginny had already noticed that the only way to get near the real Harry was through this witch. Even with the Indian twins, you could easily see which one Hermione approved of. She quickly held her hand out and shook Hermione's. "I would like that. A lot. My brothers tend to forget I'm there sometimes." Her hand was soon in Harry's, and Ginny's battle now was not to hyperventilate. "Well, you're welcome to join us any time. We've always room for more friends." Ginny's blush might have been bright enough to stop every train in King's Cross, but her wide smile warmed Bill's heart. He'd known all along this was a gamble, but this time he was betting on a goblin. Harry had said exactly the right thing. Ron's arrival threatened to ruin the moment, but Bill managed to convey with a glare just how much trouble Ronnie would be in if he opened his big mouth. And the moment passed. Padma's arrival saw her introduced to Ginny too, before she apologized to her friends. "Sorry, Harry. I thought I had it covered. Parvati must have opened her present the moment I left and decided she really had to thank you personally. It is a beautiful scarf and she'll probably never take it off. She does understand why you gave her it, though. My parents were pleased too, and rather keen to meet you. Could we arrange that for some time later?" "No problem, Padma. I'm glad she liked my gift." Bill took the opportunity this presented to offer some thanks of his own. "Speaking of gifts, please thank your father for me, Harry. He provided a portkey so our brother Charlie could travel from Romania to spend Christmas with us. You can't imagine how happy my mother is that the entire family will be together over the holidays. It certainly made her Christmas. The arrival of the twins instantly introduced some of the chaos they were rapidly gaining a reputation for. This time, though, all present thought the chaos was unintentional. "Hey everyone, hi little snitch, what brings you here? That dress tells me you're not here to greet your handsome twin brothers." Ouch! Ginny's shoe had connected with Fred's shin. Horrible twin brothers, more like. Hermione's laughter stopped the assault, becoming more serious. "Oh, Ginny, you're going to fit right in. We'll look forward to seeing you at Hogwarts. Let's go, guys. Mum and Dad will be waiting and the car's probably on the meter." As the trio was leaving, the Weasleys all heard Padme address Harry. "Please tell me you had no idea what that last bit meant either." His shake of the head surprisingly appeared to reassure the young witch. A pair of eyes with a lot more experienced at observing people than Ginny's had also carefully watched events on the platform unfold, but with far more sinister motives and intentions. Lucius was looking for potential victims to pass the diary on to, and had quickly discovered he was spoilt for choice. His plan called for the chosen victim to be one of two things: either a person close to the boy or someone holding a grudge. He preferred the first option, imagining Crow's distress as someone close to him became enveloped in darkness, but wasn't prepared to cross anything out at the moment. The Chinese girl fawning over the boy and being spurned put her on the list of possibles, as did the youngest Weasley practically passing out when meeting the boy. Lucius well remembered her brother threatening to blow his head off, and her father was also near the top of his shit list. The young Bones bitch was also clearly on friendly terms, and simultaneously getting back at her aunt would be a really sweet revenge. That particular choice of victim would certainly have to be classed as a high-risk strategy though, one that could easily come back to bite him on the arse. Amelia Bones was no fool, something that would have to be considered before making his final decision. His three closest friends would clearly be Lucius's best bet. Though each came with their own particular problems, the mudblood would surely cause Crow the most distress, but Lucius was loath to admit he wouldn't have a clue how to even find her, never mind slip the diary into her possession. She wasn't being discarded just yet, but that particular outcome would require a great deal more luck, rather than his careful planning. Longbottom would practically fit into the same category. Augusta was renowned for never letting her grandson out of her sight. The Indian witch was one he would need to garner more information on, and his source just walked up to him. "Come Draco, time to go home." The young Indian witch in question was currently congratulating her friend on how she'd handled the Weasley situation. Now that it was just them, Hermione was free to rant. "It's bad enough having older witches hanging over Harry, now I'm going to have to put up with younger ones making doe eyes at him too. It could be worse, Hermione. At least it's only witches hanging over me." Harry's face as he made that remark had both his friends laughing. It was a happy trio who made their way through the portal to what was another world for two of them. Bill wanted to know how his sister was feeling. "I'm fine, Bill, though no thanks to these jokers. I can't wait to get my wand, and then a few people are going to see some payback." This started Bill laughing, or rather the fear in his twin brother's eyes did. "I know some good curses, Ginny, and promise to teach you before you head to Hogwarts. At least it seems as if you've made some friends before you get there." Ginny's blush was back in full force. "I thought he looked good in that picture on the front page of today's Prophet. He's far more handsome in real life." "Oh, I think I'm going to be sick." Bill was in like a shot. He'd worked too hard to get Ginny to this stage to let anyone's jealousy ruin it now. "That's probably because you've been eating like a pig again, Ronnie. Harry's on the front page of the Prophet for returning a priceless Founder's artifact to Hogwarts, and you're still on probation for another 6 months. If your sister wants to make friends with them, that is her business. Any Weasley who has a problem with that will have to take it up with me. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on her at Hogwarts." Fred was trying to atone for his earlier screw-up with his sister. "Hey, Harry's a friend of ours. Why would we have a problem with that? Yeah, we heard he held a great party last night for all the first years, except Ron here. Why would we have any problems with the boy who got us out of Snape's class? Sorry about earlier, Ginny." Her smile let them know they were off the hook. When Percy had finally said goodbye to his girlfriend, the Weasleys portkeyed to the burrow. Padma was lying in bed trying to get her head around the things she'd seen, things the Grangers took for granted. Harry had never tasted Indian food, so they all decided that's what they would have tonight. Out came a menu and choices were made. It was the next bit that blew her mind. Simply by picking up something called a telephone, their order was soon delivered to the house. Here were dishes her mother would work all day to prepare, sealed in containers and delivered right to your table. As if that wasn't enough of a jolt, discovering that the same service was available for most of the world's cuisines by simply punching different numbers into the telephone almost put her into shock. A light knock at the door saw Hermione enter. "Everything okay, Padma?" Hermione was sitting on the bed beside her before Padma had sorted out her reply. "I'm beginning to appreciate just how big a shock it must have been for you and even Harry, entering the magical world. Thank goodness staying in Crawley comes without the drama that you two provide in Hogwarts. I think we could all do with a break from that. Your mum and dad are great too, Harry fairly gets on well with them." Her friend's slight blush was still there, even behind the wide smile. "Mum simply adores Harry. The fact that he has me exercising and learning defense put him straight into Dad's good books too. I'm glad you like it here. Apart from that surprise weekend with Harry, this is the first time I've actually had friends staying." "Well, snap, this is also the first time I've ever stayed with friends." Both girls hugged at that before Hermione headed out the room. Padma couldn't resist a parting shot before her friend left. "Are you now going to tuck Harry in?" Hermione, though, was getting used to her friend's teasing, and decided to tease right back at her. "I don't think that's a good idea. Last time I did that we ended up spending the night together. Good night, Padma." She went to bed with a satisfied grin on her face. Hermione, though Padma's look of utter shock was worth the grilling that would surely follow tomorrow. Padma was desperate to ask Hermione for details, but the girl was long gone before she got her brain back in gear. Apart from experiencing a whole new world, she was finding her friend was this whole different girl away from Hogwarts. Padma wanted this holiday to be an experience, and so far she was anything but disappointed. Amelia Bones was also having a new experience. Walking into Gringotts wearing her new brooch saw her approached at once and led straight to Harry's father's office. No queuing, no surly teller, just courteously accompanied where she needed to go. After the introductions, Barchoke immediately got down to business. "Let me start by apologizing for involving our children in this. Unfortunately, I didn't really have any other options. Circumstances have provided me with proof of major corruption at the very highest levels of the Ministry of Magic. I really had nowhere else to turn." Amelia was instantly on guard, wondering just what game was being played here. "Can I see this proof? And ask how you came to have it? We were carrying out an investigation about an entirely different matter, and this just fell into our laps." Barchoke had removed a folder from his desk and now slid it across to a wary head of the DMLE. She cautiously opened the folder and felt as if she had been physically struck by the photographs displayed there. Barty Crouch was sitting having dinner with his son, a son who supposedly died over a decade ago. Barty Jr. had clearly aged from the young man she remembered, but his identity was undeniable. The picture of him laying on a bed before being covered by an invisibility cloak was particularly telling, and somewhat explained how he could be kept hidden for so long. "I must ask how you obtained these pictures, and why?" Barchoke had expected nothing less. "We employed Miss Skeeter to investigate the trial of Sirius Black. Mr. Crouch was instrumental in this process. In her own inimitable style, she practically fell over this deceit. He deliberately didn't mention Sirius' innocence, or even lack of a trial. If Amelia Bones was half the witch he thought she was, discovering Sirius never received the due process of law should see her heading back to Gringotts, if only to find out just what the hell they were up to. There was also a danger of pushing too hard too soon. One terrifying revelation at a time would do for now. We were as shocked as you clearly are by this development, but left unsure who to approach. Whether Mr. Crouch was working alone in getting his son out of Azkaban was our main concern. That this feat has never been achieved before suggested there were others involved, and left us second-guessing what our next move should be. Had we contacted the wrong person, his son could simply disappear and relations between our nations could disintegrate to an all-time low. Emilia understood that would be her main problem, how to catch Barty in the act without tipping her hand. One sniff of an investigation, and Barty Jr. would never be found. How the hell was she then supposed to organize a search for a dead man? These pictures alone wouldn't be enough to bring Crouch down. All he would have to do was claim they were faked and ask for further proof. Without that further proof, they were screwed. This led Emilia to ask the obvious question. What is your interest in Sirius Black? This Barchoke was able to answer with total honesty. We recently discovered he is Harry's godfather. Emilia's "oh shit" was in recognition that her task just got even more complicated. Apart from the goblin involvement, throwing in the names of Sirius Black, James and Lily Potter, and of course the boy who lived just dictated she was going to have a very busy Christmas. Christmas Eve with the Grangers had been planned to the last detail. After breakfast, they were all heading into London to spend the day sightseeing, with definitely some shopping along the way. Harry slipping Padma some spending cash would have gone unnoticed if the girl hadn't threw her arms around him in thanks. Dan and Emma were intending to pick up the tab for everything today though, having saved a small fortune by switching their banking to Gringotts. They began at the Marble Arch end of Oxford Street, admiring the Christmas lights and the stores. By the time they were having their lunch in a fast food outlet at Oxford Circus, Padma and Harry had been supplied with multiple items of Muggle clothing from the many stores they had stopped in. Padma was a bit like a kid in a sweet shop. Her eyes never stopped moving as she attempted to take everything in, while Emma was still struggling with the concept that all their shopping was currently stored in the book bag Harry wore. Hermione and Harry were delighted to be eating burgers. It meant that they could still hold hands while having their lunch. The crowds on Oxford Street made their usual activity of walking arm in arm really difficult. Hermione solved the problem by grabbing his hand. Both had enjoyed the contact, and the only time they had been separated since was when one of them went into a changing room to try on clothes. The sightseeing shopping continued down Regent Street to Piccadilly Circus. From there it was a short hop to Trafalgar Square and the biggest Christmas tree in London. The antique nativity scene in the glassed-in display also took some explaining before they headed off down the Strand. Somerset House is a magnificent building, seeing many uses in its 450-year history. It could be argued that one of the worst uses was as an inland revenue office. Nobody likes to pay taxes. There could be no argument, though, that the group was seeing it at one of its best today. An ice rink filled the lower courtyard, with sparkling lights, hanging decorations, and a beautiful Christmas tree, all adding to the strikingly festive sight. There were small decorated huts selling wares and a large cafe spread along one entire side of the rink. It was to here Dan and Emma gravitated while Hermione dragged her two now reluctant friends toward the skate-hire kiosk. Both parents sipped their hot chocolate while watching the trio take to the ice. Hermione had skated since she was about 7, so had no trouble on the slippery surface. Harry's grace and athleticism seemed to help as he soon mastered the basics of staying upright. Poor Padma, though, appeared to spend more time on her bum than actually skating. Now that Harry was mobile, he and Hermione each took one of Padma's arms, and the trio were soon making their wobbly way around the rink. The three friends who later ran up to Dan and Emma all wore that look only achievable by kids having fun in the cold red cheeks, sparkling eyes and wide smiles. After more hot chocolate all round, they then made their way over to Covent Garden, where Dan had already reservations booked at a lovely Italian restaurant. It was a happy and certainly full bunch who caught the train back to Crawley. It was on the train home. Hermione asked a question that had just occurred to her. "Mum, Dad, are we going to church tonight?" Emma and Dan had talked this over and decided to give it a miss. "No, honey, with Harry and Padma not celebrating Christmas, we were—" Dan never got to say any more as Harry interrupted. "Excuse me, Dan, please don't change your normal celebrations because of us. We would both be delighted to come along. That's if we're allowed." Hermione squeezed his hand, since it was still held in hers. "Everyone's allowed in church, Harry. We usually go to the midnight service on Christmas Eve. Do you really want to come?" It was actually Padma who answered. "I certainly want to go. I hope to experience as much of this way of life as possible." Plans were quickly made to go home and just chill for a few hours before getting ready for church. Hermione was soon advising both her friends what clothes they had bought today would be suitable for the occasion. An occasion they were now all looking forward to. Amelia wasn't looking forward to telling Susan she was going to be working over Christmas. She had really missed her niece since the young witch left for Hogwarts, and was not happy about missing Christmas with her only family. That had also been her dilemma when arranging her response to those photographs. Amelia needed people she could trust at her side, but also required the entire situation to be kept ultra quiet. If someone had a spouse and kids, keeping it quiet that they had a mission on Christmas Day would be so much harder to do. Gossip like that would be all over the ministry in no time. This led her to take the potentially dangerous decision of keeping her team small. She was banking heavily on the element of surprise. Amelia had no intention of telling her team of just 4 Aurors what they were going to be doing, not until they were ready to leave on the actual mission. The head of the DMLE understood she was putting her career on the line here. Barty would demand, and certainly get her head on a silver salver, if she didn't pull this off properly. They needed to catch Barty Jr. or she was ruined. That the same convicted and supposedly deceased Death Eater assisted in placing 2 Aurors in the permanent spell damage ward of St. Mungo's was all the motivation Amelia needed to undertake this high-risk plan. Frank and Alice Longbottom never got the chance to sit and have dinner with their boy. She fully intended that the Crouch father and son would both pay for their crimes. She had also taken Barchoke's answer to heart, and did some quiet digging herself into the trial of Sirius Black. Amelia was astonished to find absolutely nothing. She didn't want to alert anyone until they had both young and old Barty wrapped up, but Amelia certainly intended looking into the matter further once that was achieved. A quiet word with Minerva regarding Barchoke's character had produced a surprisingly positive result. The Hogwarts deputy headmistress' answer of a devoted father who would do anything to help and protect his son was rather unexpected. She needed to know just how Sirius Black fitted into this picture, and exactly what the goblins were actually after. They were making their way home from church, an occasion Harry and Padma had thoroughly enjoyed. I really liked the nativity play. It helped explain things I was struggling with. The children seemed to have such fun doing it too. The mischief was twinkling in Dan's eyes as he couldn't resist a gentle jibe. Didn't Hermione tell you, Harry? She made her acting debut in the church nativity play a few years ago. Did? I was 6. This memory had Emma smiling. Yes, but even then Hermione knew what she wanted. She was cast as one of the 3 wise men, but insisted it should be a wise woman. Any teasing to be done, and Padma wanted to be part of it. She did decide to cut Hermione a break, though. It could have been worse. Hermione, that wee boy who was supposed to be a sheep, spent the entire time waving to his mum and dad. I had to bite my lip to save from laughing. Harry also came to his best friend's rescue. Well, I would love to have seen Hermione in the play, and think she was right about the wise woman bit too. Emma thought this was really cute, but Dan liked his mischief. Oh, don't worry, Harry, we have plenty of pictures of Hermione in the play, along with hundreds of others you should see. Dad was soon followed by the sound of laughter. This looked like being a very merry Christmas in the Granger household. Harry was wakened by a hyper-excited Hermione bouncing on his bed. I know we weren't going to exercise today, but I woke at our usual time and am far too excited to go back to sleep. Merry Christmas, Harry. She bent and kissed his cheek at that, causing both of them to blush. Unsure of what to say, Harry fell back on routine. You want to practice swords in the back garden? By way of an answer, Hermione gave him a hug before shooting out the room to change into appropriate clothing. Dan was dragged from his slumber by the unusual sound of thwack-thwack noises emanating from the back garden. He hauled himself from his nice warm bed to look out the window. He was still standing there 10 minutes later when his wife's arms snaked around his waist from behind. Her Merry Christmas went unanswered. He couldn't take his eyes off their daughter. I can't believe that's the same girl we sent off to school in September. She seems to have grown so much. Probably because she has. Mainly in confidence. I think she's going to grow into an outstanding young woman, with friends who will be there for her throughout the journey. They watched fascinated as the pair swapped between defense and offense, probing for weaknesses in their opponents. Hermione had always been a willing pupil at anything she put her mind to. Watching the concentration on her face as she parried and shielded Harry's attacks was something to behold. It was compulsive viewing and kept both Grangers at the window until they were finished exercising. Now it was time to get breakfast ready before they settled down for presents. Susan was also up early. She wanted to have some time with her aunt before they both had to leave. She was heading over to spend Christmas Day with her best friend. Hannah's parents knew from long experience not to ask too many questions as to why her Aunt Amelia had to go into the ministry today. Harry had told Susan his father wouldn't have used the word urgent if it hadn't been very important. A sense of urgency would be the best way to describe Auntie since her return from Gringotts. The young Hufflepuff had watched with the rest of the class that day. Harry had taken down Lucius Malfoy. She had no doubt both Harry and her aunt were on the same side. Susan knew she was being selfish, but she just wished the good guys could at least get Christmas Day off. Surely that wasn't too much to ask. The friends were taking turns passing out the gifts they'd gotten for each other. Padma started the proceedings, and Hermione now found herself the proud owner of an ultra-brightly coloured Indian silk wrap skirt. Harry received a toy armoured knight figure, resplendent on a toy horse. This saw him laugh with pleasure before telling Padma he loved it. Hermione was incredibly nervous over her gift to Harry. "What do you get for your best friend, who's the goblin who has everything?" was such a strange request. She was practically unique in facing a problem like this. Harry had unwrapped her present and was now staring at it with an expression she didn't recognize. Hermione couldn't take the suspense anymore and started to babble. "I didn't know what to get you. The clothes seemed too impersonal. Then Professor Snape went and stole my thunder. Do you hate it, Harry?" Hermione had gotten him a lovely shirt and a nice pair of black jeans. It was the book on top, though, that held all his attention. She'd christened it the Book of Hermione, because that's basically what it was. Here was his best friend in all her glory, from an infant right up until they had their picture taken on the steps of Gringotts. Each picture had at least a paragraph explaining the where, when, and what was going on in the picture, all in Hermione's beautiful handwriting. The amount of thought and effort she had clearly lavished on this gift just blew Harry away. He raised his eyes from his gift to see Hermione almost hyperventilating with anxiety. His wide smile soon put a stop to her fretting. "It's fantastic, Hermione. I love it." Padma also really liked her jeans and t-shirt from Hermione before they moved on to Harry's presents. A silver Ravenclaw eagle charm on a chain of the same material was much admired and appreciated by Padma. Emma was ohing and ahhing over the pyramid Harry had given her and Dan without having the slightest clue what it was. "Oh, Mum, that's wonderful. Did you include that memory crystal Professor Hobson showed us, Harry?" "That, and a few others. I thought your mum and dad might like to see inside Hogwarts." This earned him a hug from Emma as he nervously waited on Hermione opening her gift. The witch in question was also nervous. The parcel was long and quite heavy. Her hands were shaking as she stripped back the wrapping to reveal a sword. It was a bejeweled work of art that was certainly shorter than Harry's, and Hermione didn't know quite what to say. Padma gave her time to recover. "I'll say this for you, Harry. You have definitely got your own sense of style. Most boys giving jewels would have them mounted in a necklace, or at least earrings, not embedded into the hilt of a sword, practical and beautiful at the same time. It fits our Hermione perfectly. She's a friend of our nation, and is entitled to wear her own blade. The last non-goblin to own a blade like that was Godric Gryffindor." Hermione had unsheathed her sword and was twirling the weapon around, looking to see if her name was on the blade. It was an embarrassed Harry who answered her unasked question. They wouldn't put an unmarried female's name on the blade, rather wait until her name changed after her wedding. "Harry, it's beautiful and feels amazingly balanced in my hand." Spotting the concerned looks her parents were wearing, Hermione tried to put their minds at rest. "Dad, goblin females learn to use weapons purely so they can defend themselves. They aren't allowed to become warriors or fight in a war." "I am so glad to hear that, Hermione. It's a beautiful gift, but also deadly. I hope you'll be careful with it." As usual, it was Padma who tried to lighten the mood. I'm now going to have to walk around Hogwarts with two of them carrying swords. I suppose that beats being woken up by listening to them practice first thing in the morning. Can neither of you two give normal a try?" Both her friends smiled at her gentle teasing, knowing that she was deliberately making light of a situation that could have become awkward. Hermione thanked Harry for her gift before showing her parents how to operate the Goblin Viewer. They were bowled over by the scene from the steps of Gringotts. Barty Crouch was on his knees in front of the fire, talking to Amelia Bones on the floor. Apparently some Bulgarians had been partying and almost started a riot in the leaky cauldron by offering celebratory toasts after one of them cast the dark mark. The problem was they spoke very little English, though one of them managed to communicate enough to claim to be the son of the Bulgarian Minister of Magic. They really needed to interview them before the situation escalated into an international incident. Barty could clearly see Amelia was at home, and her Christmas was being ruined too. He had just agreed to go into the ministry when the windows suddenly imploded. Barty whirled around and froze in surprise as Amelia Bones jumped through the shattered frames before firing a stunner at him. "Shaq, go. Your team upstairs while we sweep down here. Oro Tonks, keep that flu connection open and monitor the situation." Emilia and Mad-Eye were in full aura garb as they rushed through the downstairs portion of the house. For Amelia, arriving in the kitchen and seeing the table set for two was a big boost. The head Auras swiped her hand over each of the chairs and felt elated when it smacked into something solid. She closed her hand over the invisibility cloak and dragged it off, much to the distress of a now sobbing house elf. "Barty Crouch Jr., you are under arrest." Amelia then stunned the unresponsive wizard for good measure before producing magic-inhibiting cuffs. "Mad-Eye, get Shaq and Gawain back down here and make sure Barty Sr. is going nowhere without us. Tell Tonks to head for the ministry and wait for us there. I want these two questioned today before anyone can interfere." Amelia could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She was getting too old for this shit. Jumping through blasted-out windows was a game for younger Auras, but it had worked perfectly. Seeing two Amelia Bones had frozen Barty for the second they needed to take him out. She'd noticed Mad-Eye hit him with a stunner too as they passed. All her team now knew what was at stake here today and were determined there would be no slip-ups. Phase 1 had been a resounding success. Now all they needed to do was discover just how far the corruption had spread in the ministry. They weren't out of the woods yet. They could all still find themselves without jobs before the new year if enough of the wrong people were implicated in this. Dan and Emma were sitting enthralled as they watched the kids' potions class. Both had done their fair share of chemistry labs as they went through university, but this was something else. Yes, they were using cauldrons, but the precision needed for the ingredient preparation and brewing was a million miles away from making a pot of soup. Here was a branch of magic they could understand. Sort of. They were interrupted by a couple of Gringotts owls, delivering a rather large book that contained details of the Potter properties. This had Hermione really excited. "Oh, wonderful, now we can look through your houses and start planning where we want to go this summer." Padma couldn't help but notice the Potter crest on the front of the book. She was also a pure-blood and the hat didn't sort her into Ravenclaw for nothing. "Harry, how can you access these? Don't you need to be head of your family first?" The hush that descended with that question worried Padma. "Guys, you know I can keep my mouth shut. This is obviously something you don't want made public." "Padma, you know we trust you, but this just brought up something I hadn't thought of. How to invite you and Neville on holiday with us, without alerting the world that I've taken on my head of house. Does this mean you've made your choice, Harry?" "No, Padma, it just means that I'm the only one who can make that choice. My father didn't want anyone attempting to gain control of me with the Potter family ring on my finger. That can't happen now." "I won't say a word, Harry." This drew a smile. "I know, Padma. I have no worries about that. Now that you do know, can I have a word with you? In private." Emma watched as Harry led Padma out into the back garden. Here was her first chance since this morning to talk to her daughter alone. "You're okay, love, to say the least. A rather unusual present Harry got you." Her daughter smiled back at her. "Not for a goblin, Mum. I know it's easy to forget, but that's who Harry is. His most prized possession is his knife. It never leaves him. Its sheath is charmed to be invisible so you can't see it even when he has his sleeveless tunic on. She glanced over to where Moonlight was lying on his back, amusing himself by swiping at one of the lower baubles on the Christmas tree. He got my birthday absolutely perfect, and my sword is practically a work of art. Would you like to bet it's worth a small fortune too? Both had stopped as Dan now joined them in staring out the window. Whatever Harry had said to Padma, she was clearly upset. Harry opening his arms and the now sobbing witch throwing herself into them was puzzling too. It finally hit Hermione just what was happening here. Damn, damn, damn. Hermione, care to enlighten your poor ignorant parents just what the hell is going on out there? I'm only guessing, Dad, but Harry told Padma he was head of House Potter, then asked for a quiet word. Whatever that word was, Padma is clearly distraught, though not upset with Harry. Since the girl was currently clinging to him as if her life depended on it, their daughter's analysis was hard to refute. It still didn't tell them anything, though. Please tell us something we don't know, Hermione. I'm only guessing, Mum, but I think Harry's just told Padma he's turning down the marriage contract her father offered. What? They're both only 11. I know, Mum, pure-blood customs means Harry has to deal with the situation as soon as possible, once Padma knew he was head of House Potter. She obviously didn't know her father had offered her hand in marriage. That's barbaric. It's different from what we believe, Dad, but it's their custom. Don't some Muggle cultures still have arranged marriages today? We come across differences like this all the time between us. Using words like barbaric doesn't help us understand our friend's point of view. I certainly don't want you arranging a husband for me. It doesn't mean I'm going to lose my friends because their parents might do that for them. Hermione felt her mother's arms wrap around her. When did you get so wise? When I was 6 and had to wear that stupid costume. All three smiled at that and watched the young man comfort his friend in their garden. When he finally led Padma back into the house, she flew right into Hermione's arms, and the two girls held each other tightly. I didn't know, Hermione, I swear I didn't know. It's okay, Padma, it was easy to see you didn't. Hermione could feel the tension leave her friend at that. Harry was brilliant with me, Hermione, that could have been really terrible, but he made everything okay. He really is something. Hold on to him. We'll all hold on to each other, Padma. We're all friends. Harry approached both girls, unsure of how his actions would be received. Are we okay? He suddenly found himself with two witches holding on to him. Of course we are, Harry. Now we can have our Christmas dinner and then figure out where we're all going on holiday this summer. Also, how to get Padma and Neville there too. Oh, Harry, I just remembered something. My father really wanted to meet you. It makes more sense now, though I can't figure out why he offered me instead of Parvati. The blush on Harry's face told its own story. He offered betrothal contracts for both of us. Harry didn't answer that particular question, but wasn't fooling anyone. Providing he doesn't know I'm now head of House Potter, I can refer all matters like that to my father. Emma had a question she was dying to ask. Well, actually a few questions. Is it customary for the girl not to know that her father had offered a betrothal contract on her? Padma answered as best she could. I don't really know, Emma. Pure-blood society is very male-dominated, and even more so where I come from. My father's word is law in our household. To disobey him would bring shame to our family. At least I now know why he so readily agreed to me coming here. The mother tried not to let her shock show at that. Thankfully, Dan appeared as horrified as she was with this news. The Granger household was most certainly a partnership, not a dictatorship. I was just wondering if some of these girls who kept approaching Harry knew they were offered as betrothals by their fathers. That would certainly explain some of the more persistent ones. Do you know if they are, Harry? Sorry, Hermione, I only glanced down the list once last summer, and the names meant nothing to me at the time. I only remembered Padma's because they were twins. My goblin upbringing dismissed that option immediately. This sounded something that Dan wanted to hear. Why would your upbringing automatically rule that out? Glares from his wife and daughter soon had him explaining further. I'm not attempting to be judgmental here, just gather information on different cultures. Goblins only have one mate, Dan, and that mate is for life. My father's wife died in childbirth, with his baby son passing soon after. He wouldn't even consider taking another wife, no goblin would. This drew a smile from the dentist. Those views are pretty close to the ones we hold, Harry. That was the only reason I asked. Hermione has entered this whole other world where everything appears different. Like you, we're trying to understand as much as we can about those differences. Emma thought the entire day needed rescuing to get back to the fun they were having. One of those differences is Christmas dinner. I'm pleased and also terrified that I'm cooking the first Christmas dinner for both of you. She was laughing at this, but still rather nervous. She'd asked Hermione if her friends had any special dietary requirements, only to be told they ate whatever was in front of them. It would soon be time to see if that was true. Cornelius was not a happy minister. Only Amelia telling him that if he didn't come to the ministry immediately, he may not be the minister much longer, got him up from his Christmas dinner. There was no Christmas cheer as he greeted his head of DMLE in her office. Amelia, this better be good or you could find yourself back on an Auror patrol. Cornelius, if we don't get this right, both of us could be out on our ear by the new year. She handed him one of the pictures Barchoke had supplied, and watched the color drain out his face. Is this genuine? Since I have both of them currently in our cells, the answer would have to be yes. Watching the Minister for Magic panicking was not a pretty sight. We have to contain this, Amelia. It could bring down the ministry. I totally disagree, Minister. Containing it could cause us a lot more problems. I was given that picture by a goblin. The goblins have no bearing on this. Who cares what they say? The boy who lived, especially since he calls the goblin who gave me this father. After Cornelius had taken a much-needed seat, Amelia explained what they had already discovered. We immediately questioned the prisoners using truth serum. I needed to know who else in the ministry was involved in this. Thankfully, the answer was absolutely no one. Barty's dying wife extracted a promise that he would get their son out of Azkaban. It was her who took her son's place and died in his cell, still under the influence of Polyjuice potion. Barty has since kept his son in line by repeated use of the Imperious Curse. The minister let out a huge sigh of relief. Crouch's guilt was undeniable, and the ministry were mostly in the clear. That was until the obvious question hit him. How and why did this photograph end up in goblin hands? Barchoke told me they were carrying out an investigation into the trial of Sirius Black. I did some quiet digging myself and couldn't discover anything. Questioning Barty gave me the answer. I couldn't find anything because there was nothing to find. Sirius Black was sent to Azkaban without a trial. That wasn't what worried Cornelius, rather the reasons behind the goblin investigation. Did you ask why they were inquiring about Black? I did, and you won't like it any more than I did. Amelia went over to a sideboard in her office and poured a couple of brandies from the decanter she had there. She handed one to Cornelius before giving him the bad news. Sirius Black is Harry Potter's godfather. The minister was grateful for the brandy. It fought off some of the icy chill that had just crept up his spine. Please tell me you have some good news for me, Amelia, or at least some idea how we get ourselves out of this one. My Susan told me what happened at the leaving feast. I'm surprised you let Dumbledore con you into that, Cornelius. This change of tack threw the minister. What do you mean? Harry may attend Hogwarts, Cornelius, but we heard from Dumbledore's own lips that the boy will have nothing to do with him. He was trying to use your presence to ingratiate himself with the boy. Harry's answer was predictable to anyone who even slightly knows the lad. It also was no surprise to me that the rest of his yearmates followed him out of the hall, or that he had made provisions for them doing so. Are you saying Albus was using me? Albus Dumbledore uses everyone for his own ends. That the famous boy who lived won't even be in the same room as him must be driving the old coot crazy. The goblins declared Dumbledore persona non grata over a decade ago. Harry may consider himself a goblin, but he also has his own personal reasons for doing the same. I don't want to see the ministry pulled into Dumbledore's mess, and think I know how to avoid it. Amelia laid out the basis of her proposal. We play everything in public, and strictly by the book. This would also include a public trial for Sirius Black. She held up her hand to stop the minister's expected protest at that course of action. On Halloween, Black had 2 goblin visitors. The security guard ensured they signed in and out. Their names were Barchoke and Old Crow. It would appear Harry not only visited his parents' graves on Halloween, he also slipped off to visit his godfather in Azkaban. This information was hard for Cornelius to believe. The boy who lived was in Azkaban, and we weren't informed. He kept his hood up and spoke gobbledygook. He wasn't recognized as anything other than another goblin. What we have to recognize, though, is that they have been at least one step ahead of everyone, no matter what some people have tried. The logs show they spent over an hour with Black. It can be no coincidence that they then started an investigation into how Black ended up in Azkaban. We're dealing with the results of that investigation today. Amelia, surely you're not suggesting Black is anything other than guilty? I really can't imagine them expending all this effort just to get Black's Azkaban sentence legally confirmed. Neither of us had anything to do with him ending up in Azkaban, but we've just been given the perfect opportunity to align your ministry firmly on the boy who lives good side. You call an emergency meeting of the Wizengamot for tomorrow. I'll get Black and the boy here. Let Harry and his father see justice being done, and whether Black is innocent or guilty doesn't really matter in terms of the ministry's relationship with the boy. It's win-win for us. Cornelius was finally getting it. If Black is innocent, we get to set him free, and share no blame in him being sent there. If he's guilty, then we can ask the boy's opinion on an appropriate punishment. Both Crouches should really face a Dementor for their crimes, and the ministry can claim its tough new stance on law and order is paying dividends. Are you sure you can get the boy here? That shouldn't be a problem. What I need you to do is avoid telling anyone, especially Dumbledore, just what we're up to. Let's keep to an official statement that an emergency has arisen that needs to be dealt with immediately. Dragging out the 2 Crouches should satisfy them on that count. After their trial, we can announce the irregularity that's now been thrown up and try Sirius Black directly after the Crouches. It was a pensive minister of magic who agreed to Amelia's proposals. The minimum amount of notice that can be given for an emergency meeting is 2 hours. I'll send out notification first thing in the morning and set the meeting for 10:30. Will you be able to accomplish everything you need to do in that time? Amelia was thinking of sending Shaq and Tonks to Azkaban to collect Black. Mad-Eye and Gawain could take it in shifts to sit on the prisoners while she headed for Gringotts. We should manage. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your Christmas. Cornelius, it should be quite the Boxing Day. After a lovely dinner, they had all sat around the table and studied the Potter properties. Dan had liberated a giant children's map of the world out the loft and temporarily had it hanging in the dining room. It had once adorned Hermione's bedroom wall in their daughter's younger years. That same witch currently had a handful of color stickers and was placing them on the map at Potter property locations. The group really wanted to visit. The problem was, even being really choosy, they already had 6 stickers on the map with about half the book still to go. Harry, I now understand why my father offered both my sister and I as brides. The Patils would be classed as quite well off, but Merlin, this is something else. The extent of the Potter wealth has never been made public, always only hinted at. Seeing proof of it here is kinda overwhelming. No wonder there's a lot more betrothal contracts with your name on them out there. This was confusing to Emma. Is it really all about wealth, Padma? Well, to my father, he values breeding, power, and wealth. The Potters are an ancient, respected family that gives them a lot of power, without even taking into account their incredible wealth. People like Malfoy want you to lick their boots and acknowledge them as your betters. Yet they couldn't muster even a tenth of what Harry would seem to available. The boy in question was actually getting embarrassed at the way the conversation was turning and attempted to change it back to happier subjects. Let's leave pure blood politics out of it tonight, Padma. I'm having too much fun looking through things my family own. My mum and dad might even have visited some of these. Now who wants to vote on a private island in the Maldives? Emma's hand was actually shaking as she pulled the book over toward her to see this one better. Hermione was already putting a sticker over the islands on the map. Everyone halted what they were doing as there was a knock at the kitchen door. Dan left but was soon back with Barchoke. It was greetings all round before the goblin got down to business. "Harry, we're going to see your godfather tomorrow morning." Hermione was soon at Harry's side with her arm around him and her head resting on his shoulder. "Even the thought of you visiting Azkaban scares the life out me, Harry." Barchoke gave a deep, throaty chuckle. "Don't worry, Hermione, we're not going anywhere near Azkaban. Harry and I are heading for the Ministry of Magic. Sirius has a trial in front of the Wizengamot tomorrow." A loud whoop from Harry saw Hermione hoisted into the air and also earned a comment from Padma. "Okay, forget all about giving normal a try. How about letting me in on what's going on?" Christmas Day was just like all the other days of the year for the inmates of Azkaban. Festive was not a word that could ever be used to describe the atmosphere on the island. There was also a distinct lack of cheer. All that was about to change for one inmate. The cell door opened and Senior Auror Shacklebolt performed his duty. "Sirius Black, you're coming with us. You will be tried for your crimes in front of the entire Wizengamot and under the influence of truth serum tomorrow morning." The haggard figure's reply was somewhat unexpected. "About bloody time.